Hello, you guys. Okay, I'm so sorry that I'm late for this live. I told you, I've got so many projects I'm working on, and that situation that I explained to many of you the other day, we're having a meeting on that tomorrow. And so I got pulled into an impromptu meeting, and right on kind of in line with this topic, as trad wifing and ballerina farm. Um, right in line with that topic, I'm also a homemaker and a stay-at-home mom. So I was trying to juggle my philanthropic work and the like random meeting I got pulled into with taking time out. I try to take, and I don't always succeed with this, 1 hour a week, at least minimally, to each child that I still have in the home. And where we have time alone together. And so my eldest daughter wanted to take a walk, not the daughter you guys met the other day, who joined me for a live, but the one that's older than her wanted to take a walk. And I was like, yes, let's do this. And I didn't want to be late for the walk. We were supposed to do it at 2:30. And as soon as I got ready to walk out the door, I got a call about the philanthropic work I do. And we were bringing in another agency to join us for a meeting tomorrow to kind of sort out the mess that I was telling you guys about. And then I had to finish my walk with my daughter. So I'm late for this because I didn't want to rush. And I'm sure you guys understand taking time to walk with her. There are lots of blackberries growing by our house. Um, and I really wanted to like climb in there and pick a bunch of them. But we didn't. But we did walk through a big, um, I don't know if you would still call it an orchard, if the trees are Chinese witch hazel trees, but a big orchard and just kind of relaxed. I didn't want her to feel rushed while we took our time. So that is why I'm late for this live. You guys will just have to forgive me, please. Um, and we can go ahead and get into it. I want to start by actually playing a video of from the woman who did the interview on Ballerina Farm, and I want to talk about a few things in this video. Number one, I don't want to say I don't care, but I really don't care about Ballerina Farm like that. I'm just using that story as to platform something I do really care about, which is the self-hatred that women have. Like, oh my goodness, the way women hate themselves is out of control. Um, the dis- the vitriol spit toward and the demeaning of everything that makes women unique is something that I'm just so appalled by, and I'm really just gonna use Ballerina Farm to point out some things. The other thing I don't like is the cosplaying of, homemaking. I think a lot of women are making money who aren't homemaking in ways that are actually realistic, like if you're really running a household. And I get it. It's like the fetishization of homemaking. So maybe that's what I should say. The fetishization of homemaking to the point where it's actually seems stupid. And I think both sides are wrong. I think the self-hating women are wrong. And I think the women who are turning homemaking into some kind of weird fetish are also wrong. So before we, oh, awesome. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Um, so yeah, there we go. And I'm going to just share a short video from the lady that who wrote the article. And again, we're just going to use Ballerina Farm to have a wider conversation. I also want to talk about this idea that stay-at-home motherhood is not applicable to Black women, and like stay-at-home motherhood for Black women somehow is substandard or looks different than stay-at-home motherhood for other women. So those are kind of my three topics: female self-hatred, fetishization of stay-at-home motherhood or homemaking, And what was my third one, y'all? See, I've totally lost it. I've lost the plot. Fetishization of womanhood and stay-at-home motherhood, and homemaking, um, self-hating women, and I cannot remember the third one because I got too much going on, you guys. Like, when I tell you I have way too much going on, but I do wanna talk about this. So the third one will come to me. You guys just bear with me. Bear with me. I have, as they say, mom brain. Okay, so
In April, I went to interview Hannah Nealman, otherwise known as Ballerina. There was Hannah, her husband Daniel, who's also the business partner, and their 8 children, along with cows, pigs, chickens, the whole shebang. I thought I was going to be interviewing Hannah. It turned out to be a little harder than that. Daniel is very involved in the brand. In fact, he kind of leads it. Hannah seemed to be the sort of face. Now, I spent the day with them and their 8 children and animals, really out in the sticks of Utah in the middle of nowhere. And I asked her when we were standing on the side of the mountain, is this what you always wanted to do? Is this always where you wanted to be? And she said that actually she wanted to live in New York City. That was her dream. And she had wanted to be a ballerina. The children are rustic and wild and gorgeous, and they're homeschooled there. They don't have a nanny. She is the most gorgeous, generous mother. You know, these children are literally swinging off her hair. Daniel was a little bit more leading, actually. It was sometimes hard to ask her questions, and it was sometimes hard to get a direct answer from her without her being interrupted or her deferring to her husband. Anyway, I tried to ask her all the questions that everyone online has been desperate to ask her for months. And you can read the full interview at thetimes.com.
all right. So this is the woman who wrote the article, and I wanna take a look at the article really quickly. So let me just share my screen on that. One second, you guys. Literally, as we are talking, I am moving some things around. So give me one second, I apologize. All right. So let's do this. I apologize. Remember, I told you guys I got into a meeting? I just have to verify the email we're sending out to these families. So let's do what we came to do. All right. So, all right. So, again, I'm only using this to platform a larger conversation about self hate. So, some things that stand out to me about this article is number one, her name is Hannah. And I noticed that right here in the first few paragraphs, the writer refers to her husband as Daniel, right? She brings him up quite a bit and she refers to him as Daniel and she refers to Hannah as Nilman. I'm not I'm not sure why the children, for example, are all mentioned by name. The baby Flora's mentioned by name, Daniel's mentioned by name. When she mentions other people in the house, she gives them names. But when it comes to Hannah, she never, not one time outside of this introduction that I saw, mentions her by her actual name. She mentions her by her last name. Um, And I'm not sure why that is. I just feel like that's very dehumanizing. I don't know if Hannah asked to be called Nilman the whole time or if there's a reason that she's choosing to do that. She talks about how she was crowned Miss American in August 2023 at a Las Vegas mega casino and resort. She was invited back to compete in Mrs. World. And then she says this. This is so and that's why I wanted to show you this woman. Can we remember what that woman looked like? Let's just go back to this cuz some of this is just jealousy. Just straight up jealousy. There's a part in this she calls her impossibly perfect, that she looks impossibly perfect. So, this woman, can I find her without words on her face? This woman right here is the woman who made the statement parading around the stage in a swimsuit and 5-inch heels. So she's parading around the stage in a swimsuit and 5-inch heels, shoulders back and hip popped, spray tanned, glistening, and 12 days postpartum. Obviously. That's what she writes. Obviously. This mid grade woman, and I'm not just speaking about looks, I'm saying how that exudes jealousy and hatred, which is actually scary, you guys. Like, can we just be clear that this is scary? It is scary that this woman has 8 children. One of those children is a baby, and she invited somebody in her home that clearly despises her. I mean, how terrifying is that? And this is the Times. I mean, it's giving stalker. It's giving single white female. It's giving extreme jealousy. And I am just so disgusted that this woman was in Hannah's home. And I think, as women, we have to really watch out for that because, there is a life that is natural. And I'm going to say it, even though it's controversial, natural for a woman to want to have a loving husband, to have children, to be beautiful. Yes, we want to be attractive as women, right? And for that beauty to be able to supersede giving birth because look, carrying a baby is a lot of work. Carrying a baby wreaks havoc on a woman's body. And so for a woman to come out of that in a way that some women who don't have never had a child look like they've been through the ringer, right? And then you have this woman that has come out of that, her body relatively intact still. You know what I mean? That is so picture perfect. Oh my goodness, her husband's like a billionaire or his father's a billionaire. You know what I'm saying? It's too much. For some women, that's too much. And even for us common women, it's too much. Like, people don't wanna hear that you're happily married. People don't wanna hear that you love your children. People don't wanna hear that you get to stay at home. People are angry because you're happy. And you don't even have to be a woman with a child to experience this. You can just be happy. You can just be thriving. And that will just make people angry and ready to pick you apart. And that's the energy this woman is giving me. When you listen to the words coming out of her mouth, parading around the stage in a swimsuit and 5-inch heels, shoulders back and hip popped, spray tanned, glistening, and 12 days postpartum, obviously. Ugly, ugliness. The ugliness toward another woman is palatable and it's so disgusting. And this woman, this evil woman, was invited into Hannah's home, which is insane. How many times you as a woman trying to be pro woman, which honestly, a lot of women who have many children and are happy are extremely pro woman. I know that I am very pro woman. I love other women. So you are all in your pro woman bubble, feeling amazing because you recognize how important being a woman is. Like, there's not a human being that walked this earth that did not come through the body of a woman. That is incredible when you think about it. That is insane. When you really understand what it means to be a woman, that there's not a person on this earth that exists that didn't pass through the matrix of a woman, that is insane. And if you've had children and been healthily nourished as a woman, if you are a mother and have been lucky enough to have people respect what that means, then you're probably super pro woman. So she invites this woman into her home, not knowing this woman hates her life, her family, everything about her. She only wants to, and she brings this up a lot, wants to corner her somewhere to get her to say something to prove that she is as miserable as the reporter wants her to be. This whole article, she whines and complains. In the video I showed you, she whines and complains that she couldn't corner her somewhere because she just knows if she can get her in a corner, she's going to say, actually, even though my life looks perfect, I hate it. And she so desperately wants Hannah to say that. Some people are so miserable, y'all. Some people are so miserable that it is beyond them to think that it is truly possible to be happy. And I'm going to level with you guys as somebody who has not always had a happy life. I am here to tell you it is possible to be very, very happy. It is possible to be in a relationship and just be happy, even when you're mad. Like, if you guys are married, do you have the type of marriage that even when you're upset with your husband, you still want to cuddle because you're just so happy? Like, even the bad stuff isn't that bad. Like, it's not that serious because you're so happy. Like, your baseline is so happy that you're able to like be level with everything that's going on. That you go home and like you're happy to be back at home. That you wake up in the morning and you are like, wow. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I have a pergola with like wisteria outside of my master bedroom. And I just kind of look out of the sliding doors And I wake up in the morning and I was telling Mr. I said, this is my favorite part of the day. Waking up, looking out on the lawn, through the wisteria, leaves or flowers, depending on what time of the year it is. And I just take a moment every morning to just cuddle because I'm freaking happy. And I have been. This is a man that I've been with for a while. You know what I mean? This is not brand new love. It's not the honeymoon phase. I'm just happy. That is possible. And this is coming from someone that didn't start that way. Do you know what I mean? That if you would have told me this was possible, I would have said you were a liar. I would not have believed you. But it is possible. And some people are in such a dark place, they cannot imagine that anyone could be happy and beautiful and love their family and love their lives. They cannot comprehend it, right? They cannot comprehend that that is real. And they're looking for the crack, they're looking for the flaw. Now, with that said, I personally, you know what I'm saying? She said that she looked at Daniel, who is her husband, and I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to the beauty pageant. This is a lot. I was bleeding and swollen, and milk was coming in. Let's be clear. She won Miss American or Mrs. American in 2003. She was invited back to compete in Miss World. She's a married woman. So if you're a married woman, any of us with I got a lot of babies, y'all. Any of us that have a lot of children know when you are married, you will give birth about every 16 to 18 months. If you're not doing anything to stop getting pregnant and you are healthy and fertile, your babies will be about a year and a half apart. Does anybody here have multiple like little Russian doll babies? Like they're like you could stack them inside of each other with the ages? That's pretty normal for a couple who's having sex naturally, where the woman is fertile and healthy and the husband is fertile and healthy. You will have a baby you will give birth, right? About every 18 months. Your children are normally going to be spaced about 16 months apart, right? So sometimes they'll be a year and a half apart. Sometimes they'll be 2 years apart, depending on where their birthday falls, right? So right now I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. My 15-year-old's about to turn 16. My 13-year-old will turn 14 in December, right? So that's normally how your babies are staggered when you are having sex with your husband and you are fertile and he is fertile and you are married. So when she got invited to Mrs. American to Mrs. World because she won in August 2003, the natural thing that happens when you are sexually active with your husband happened and she got pregnant. She didn't cancel going to Mrs. World. She's like, "You know what? I think I can do this." But when she gave birth, it was really, really close to the date, right? It was very close to the date. And so she had a decision to make. All right, I knew I was going to have this baby before the Mrs. World pageant, but gosh, I literally just had the baby and the pageant is like 2 weeks away. So what do I do? Do I not go or do I go? She must have wanted to participate because she was like, well, let me think, let me see how my body feels. If you're not a woman who has given birth, her milk coming in, that's like a big deal, right? So when your baby first starts nursing, you have colostrum. The first like week or so that your milk comes in, your breasts are really swollen and engorged and they leak a lot. So it would not have been realistic for her to be on stage because she's definitely going to spring a leak, right? But she says it like it's something vulgar. I shouldn't say she says it. She's framing it, the writer, like this is something vulgar. This is beautiful. Let's be clear. The only thing I don't like about this picture is if you are having this picture actually, it makes me mad, but not because she's sitting there in a pageant dress nursing her baby. This woman, all dressed up and glammed up and nursing her child, is beautiful. You know what makes me angry about this picture? Is that you have a beauty pageant that is for people who are married, women who are married. This means that they likely have children. Some of these women will have just given birth, just like Hannah, and you don't have a birthing, like a breastfeeding area for them to go to. Like, I'm mad at this picture for other reasons. Like, anybody that cares about women, what we're asking ourselves is, how come in a beauty pageant for grown women who are married, because it's a Mrs. World pageant, do you not have an area for women so that they can, if they want to be with their young children, if they have a baby, that there's like a little kind of area that's kind of made comfortable for them and their small little babies, little ones, their toddlers, so that these women can have a place to be with their families. The only thing wrong I see with this picture is that Mrs. World needs to do better. That's what I see wrong with this picture. Mrs. World needs to do better. You need to recognize these are women in the room. It's Mrs. World. These women have young children, some of them. So if you really want to treat these women right, create a space so that your beauty pageant participants don't have to breastfeed their babies in the backstage among the chairs, right? You know, a baby might need to eat at any time. A baby's not going to conform to the schedule of the pageant. So there needs to be a main room where mothers can have their toddlers in case they need that mom time. You know how toddlers are, they need connection with their mothers, where women can nurse, and then create a little space. You can do if you've ever thrown events, you'll know what I mean by this. You can do a pipe and drape. It's kind of where you create a room with pipes and drapes. And inside that room, you can put a little changing table. This could be right off backstage. A little changing table, a comfortable rocking chair or two, and create a couple of pipe and draped rooms to accommodate these mothers. That's the only thing I see wrong with this picture. I've seen a lot of commentaries, and people are looking at this picture as if it's something oppressive. It is beautiful that she has chosen to do the thing that she wanted to do, and she is nursing her baby. I love to see it because so many women struggle with breastfeeding. So I love to see a woman doing it. The only thing that could be done better is that Mrs. World could get with the program. That's the only thing that could be better. Mrs. World, you've been exposed for not properly treating your contestants and considering them and their needs as women. Oh, I have way more than 3 children. But yes, I can talk about that at some point. All right. Let's move on. So, she talks about it like it's the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On the 7th day, she rose from bed doing her bar exercises in the bathroom because she's a former ballerina that trained at Juilliard. By day 9, she was trying on outfits and zipping herself into a pair of leather trousers. And this is what she wants to say, right? A skin tight white ball gown. Baby, women aspire. Now, it couldn't have been me. Let me keep it 1,000. Respect to her, okay? Because it couldn't have been me. After I give birth, all I want to do, me, first of all, I'm an introvert. Let's start there. This woman is clearly very outgoing. I am an introvert. After I give birth, I like to just lay around with my baby. I don't want to do anything. I just want to kind of lay in bed. I want to just be with my baby. I'm not really trying to do much. That's my personality, right? This woman is obviously an extrovert. She obviously really wanted to do the beauty pageant. And you know what she said? Giving birth, this is maybe not going to be the easiest thing I've ever done, but I can do it. That takes a lot of bravery. Like, giving birth is not a walk in the freaking park. And I have had natural childbirth several times over. I know that she gives birth to her babies naturally too. If you've had natural childbirth, first of all, it hurts like don't let anybody tell you there's these women out here talking about I meditated through my natural childbirth and all that. I mean, maybe sis, maybe you did. I don't know. I'm going to give you the real. The real is that mess hurts. That mess hurts. I saw that video, Subby McGee. That mess is painful. You do forget about it for the most part. After you give birth to the baby and the pain stops, it's like really gone. It's hard to like really recapture what it felt like. You just know that that was the most horrible pain you've ever felt in your life. But just giving birth, period, is a toll on the body. So respect to her that she managed to like, you know, it is pain. Yes, I kept doing it too. It's also empowering. Like once you've given natural childbirth, oh my gosh, you're like, man, I could do anything. I felt so in touch with my womanhood after natural childbirth. To be honest, you guys, the first time I tried to do natural childbirth, when the contractions really started to pick up, I could not do it. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I was like, "Can you give me the painkiller, the one they give through the IV? Not an epidural, but just like the one they give through the IV." Oh, that painkiller was not hitting. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was not prepared. So I didn't make it. Let's just be clear. I ended up getting the epidural the first time I tried to give natural birth naturally. I wasn't ready. And I was so disappointed because like I really had wanted to have natural childbirth. Like I didn't want to not feel anything. I wanted to feel it. You know what I mean? I wanted to feel it. So the next time I had a baby, I really stuck to having natural childbirth. And it hurt. It was like wild. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. This pain is insane." And by the time the pain reached a place where honestly thought like I cannot go on, the baby popped out and it was over. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I did that." I could not believe that I did it. I was so excited. I remember like how hard it was for me to do it the first time. I was like so amazed that I was able to do it. I was amazed at like everything I felt when it was happening. I was like, "Wow, this is like amazing." Like we are so amazing as women. It's crazy. And you'll have men out here, there's some men out here who really hate and are jealous of women. They're so jealous of women. Like even dogs give birth, a horse gives birth. And you know what? It's crazy when those female animals do it. You can't take nothing away. At the end of the day, you wouldn't be here if a woman did not birth you. You can never demean it. You can never demean the process of childbirth. I say this for my cesarean sisters too. The fact that you would bring a child into this world and have to have your stomach and your uterus cut open, that's real. Women should be far better treated in this society. Okay? Everybody walking around, male and female, literally owes a woman for their presence on this earth. Especially, and you guys know that I'm pro-choice. I'm not pro-choice. I'm not pro-choice. I'm pro-life, especially in an environment where women can murder you inside of the womb. This stuff is crazy out here. Women can like kill their babies in the womb. When you're walking around living and breathing, you should really be extremely grateful because women are out here murking their babies before the baby can take their own breath. So not only do we, all of us, every last one of us, owe our existence to a woman who shared her body with us, our mothers. We are lucky to be alive because women are out here literally killing their babies before they can take their first breath. So shout out to the mothers out there that delivered their babies. Thank you. Right? That is something that is not said enough. So, oh, thank you. That's so sweet. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I miss being on here. So, that is interesting. I don't I don't know. The way people behave is on a spectrum for sure. And maybe if you found a man with the right temperament, goodness, you would get with them. All right. So it says, and shout out to goodness. I've not seen you in a long time. Well, I mean, I saw you the other night. What am I saying? You've been at the past two lives, but overall a long time. Um, so she has a spray tan, blah, blah, blah. She goes, she does the pageant. All right. And social media exploded, obviously, because it is crazy that she managed to pull this off. The reality is, women know that's not easy. Women know it's not easy to get up and do anything 2 weeks after you give birth. Women who have given birth know that. Women know it's not easy to be amazing, right? And look beautiful right after you give birth. It's impressive. I can see why so many people started following her. It's impressive. It's crazy. I wouldn't do it. But you know what? She's not me. And the fact that she accomplished that is insane to me, and it's wonderful. She says people went berserk. Yeah, because that's wild. She did some above average stuff. Let's just be clear. So, this is that shady stuff I'm talking about. She's like, throughout the maelstrom, she has remained publicly, at least, steadfast. So much insinuation, so much hatred, because you could never do what she's done. You hate her. There are people out here hating women with stable homes and loving families like this woman simply because they exist. She goes on to say she never explained, she never complained. A silence I had interrupted as defiance. Why would she complain? What is there for her to be complaining about? She could have not gone to the pageant. She could have not gone to the pageant, but she chose to go. So what is there to complain about? There's nothing to complain about. So she also tries to point out, look, it's too much. She's pointing out their Le Creuset pans. She's pointing out their auger. She's pointing out all of these things. 28 pairs of shoes. You know what I mean? She's hating. This woman is beautiful. She's got beautiful, perfect kids. And I'm saying this in the eyes of the reporter because this is how the reporter talks about her children. She talks about her children in a separate article. She goes, when you are standing in the kitchen at Ballerina Farm, way out in the western wilds of Utah, beneath the big skies and along the brutal winters and the abundant summers, it's almost impossible to imagine, right? She talks about how her children look perfect. I'm reading from another article that this woman wrote because after her article blew up, this woman is such a clout chaser. She wrote a second article on Hannah. She wrote another article on Hannah. So Hannah goes on to say She's not complaining because she planned for this, right? She planned for this. She planned ahead of time to make sure that she could participate in the pageant. I don't see a problem with this picture. This woman has money, money. She is the most privileged of stay at home moms. What is wild to me is a lot of people were complaining because she doesn't have childcare. She doesn't have like a nanny. She goes in on her. I want to talk about the nanny thing in a little. I'm hesitating because I don't want to get off into the nanny thing, right? She goes in and you can tell how jealous this woman is. She says, Neilman, not calling her Hannah, walks in a tiny blonde beauty queen, her hair wet and cheeks flushed, impossibly pretty. Just say you are jealous and you wish you were her. She says she takes the baby from her husband. She will not leave Neilman's, meaning Hannah's, chest for the 4 hours we're together. Why would her baby leave her chest? Why do women hate being mothers so much? Can we just talk about that? Women online. Now, I don't have a TikTok account, but there are all these YouTube accounts that like mash up TikTok account like videos. Women whine about motherhood like it is the worst fate you could ever have. Like giving birth and having a child is tantamount to torture. It might surprise some people to know that being pregnant is amazing. I'm not saying your back doesn't hurt. I'm not saying your feet may not swell. I'm saying that the idea that there is a little human being inside of your body, feeling your baby move around, seeing that weird alien thing where like you can kind of see their feet and their hands like pushing against your belly, that is so amazing. Like that is the definition of the word amazing. We use the word amazing for so many things that are not amazing. You know what is amazing? Having a whole nother human being in your body. That is amazing. Literally, the definition of amazing. Feeling a person inside of you move around is amazing. The fact that that's even possible is amazing. When you give birth to this human being that you've lived with for 10 months almost, and this little tiny human comes out of your body, I'm holding that baby for 4 hours straight too. I promise you, you can barely pry my hands off of one of my babies when they are born. They smell good. Holding them is so relaxing. The sounds they make, oh my gosh, the sounds that babies make are so sweet. They are beautiful. Okay, her baby didn't leave her chest for 4 hours. That makes sense. That's called being healthy minded and being a good mother. That's natural. Babies are meant. This is why I believe that women should stay at home after they have children. Women and babies are designed to be together. We literally produce their food. We are all they know when they are born. They've been listening to our voice, our heart. These babies have literally been in our bodies. When they come out of our bodies, These babies are still part of us. Yes, she held her baby for 4 hours. You should be flattered that this woman with 8 kids holding her baby took the time to even speak to you. Because honestly, time is precious when you have a newborn baby and 7 other kids running around. So the fact that anybody even took time to entertain this woman, she is very fortunate. Yeah, it's not ideal when you're having a 4-hour interview. That's my point. The fact that because who's going to wait, what happened to Mama Kush? Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy for you. I love you too. I wish you the best, like the absolute best. The absolute best. That is so beautiful. Right. The idea that you're jealous of single women is out of control. Because here's the thing, if women don't want to have children, I support that. I don't think that every woman needs to be a mother. But why can't you be happy with your life and I be happy with my life? I don't want to be single. Let me be real clear. I don't want to be single. I do not think that I am my best self. I don't think that I can be the best mother alone. I like companionship. I want to be married. I like being with a man. I like the different energy that a man brings. And I know I'm gonna trigger some people. I know I'm gonna trigger some people. I like the correction that a good man provides. You know what I mean? Like my womanhood and my motherhood is balanced by the presence of Mister. In the same way, his manhood and his fatherhood is balanced by my presence. I want, like right now, I told you guys, Mister is at our other home, right? So we're not in the same state. He's at our other home right now. He got a new contract. And so he's setting everything up so that he can manage that contract. And so he is at our other home. Our daughter's birthday is in a few days. So I am not flying to that other home because we want to be here for her birthday, right? I miss him. I don't want to be alone. Right? Sure, I have fun, I can lay all over the bed, it's one less person I have to take care of, I can do all my beauty stuff that I don't normally, wouldn't normally do and do it at hours that I wouldn't normally do it because he's not here, but I want to be with him. That makes me happy. Now, if you are somebody who you don't want companionship, you don't thrive on companionship, that's not what you're looking for, then that's good for you. But I am never jealous of a single woman because, first of all, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to have sex with a bunch of men. That's not ideal for me. Some women might feel empowered by going from man to man. I would feel used. Okay? I would feel away if I gave my body and my time to a man and he did not want to be with me long term. That's not a vibe for me personally. That's not the energy I'm looking to have in my life. But each person can, the next woman might feel differently about that. You know what I'm saying? The next woman might be on some other stuff. I like being a mother. I really like being a mother. Some women hate their kids. The Bible says, and yes, I'm Christian. For those of y'all that don't know, the Bible says older women teach the younger to love their husbands and their children. Do you know that being a mother and loving your children is not natural? to women. It is the job of those of us who know better to teach younger women how to properly love their husbands, how to properly love their children. No woman should feel guilty. If it doesn't come natural to you, baby, that is okay. The scripture tells us you need to be taught that skill. If there was a woman or women in your life that failed to teach you how to love a husband, how to love children, that is not your fault. I hope that you can get around women that can teach you that skill. It's a lie that women just naturally know how to be. We are naturally made for it, but we have to be taught, right? We have to be taught. I love my children. I have some awesome freaking children. My eldest daughter, the little camp I told you guys we're in where we had that unfortunate situation. Do you know people, I'll be out in public and people will roll up on me, because we're relatively public people where we live. They'll roll up on me and say, "Hey, I met your daughter. She is amazing." Somebody literally, they were handing out awards. Y'all, I'll put pieces of it up on my vlog channel. Just give me some time to edit all this footage that I've been collecting for you guys over the past few months. They were handing out awards, and the problem is that my daughter is so freaking awesome. She is a talented artist. I'm not saying that because I'm her mother. I'm saying that because my daughter is a talented artist. She's like good at everything. She's a talented artist. She's super, super intelligent. She crochets. She made a whole cardigan and then wore it to the camp. Like she is on point. To when they started handing out awards, she got the award. Hers was future president. They gave some other kid the art award, and people were like, because she's really the best artist. Like, really, she could have received most of those awards, and it would have been genuine and honest. And I'm not saying that because she's my child. I'm saying that because if I never came around, people approach me and are complimenting her poise. When she went up to accept her award and she was shaking hands, the audience was like whispering about how poised she was. I was like, that is right. That human came out of this womb. Okay. I did that. That is my baby. My eldest son, y'all know this child speaks 5 languages. He is solid in the Lord. He is one of the most moral and upright people I know. His siblings look up to him. Do you know that my children, his younger siblings of my oldest, they think he is the best person? Like literally, they think he's perfect. I couldn't have lucked out more with that child. My youngest, he is such a goody two shoes. He talks like he has a megaphone attached to his face. Everything he says is loud like this. Like honestly, it seems like he's always talking as if he's about to give a speech. I said if people could win conversations based on loudness, my youngest child would always win a conversation because that nobody can overtalk this child. He is so considerate and genuine. When I tell you I could name traits, I'm not going to go through all my kids because we would be here all day because I reproduce. I could go through all of my children. I love those kids. I would die for those children. I would have nothing and they would have everything. And I would be happy because it pleases me to care for them. It pleases me to raise them. My goal is to be a good mother to them. I strive to be the best mother I can for those kids. When I feel I'm falling short with them, that bothers me because I know the job of being a mother, the job of cultivating a new human being is so important. Why am I saying this? Because she held that baby for 4 hours, and while it might be inconvenient for her to hold a child for 4 hours during an interview, The problem isn't with her holding the baby. The problem is that the interviewer doesn't recognize that this little petty, funky interview is a substandard calling to me being a mother and being near my child. You are lucky that this woman took time out of her mothering, which is a way more important job than working at the Times. And I don't care what anybody says. Yes, being a mother is more important than any other job you can do, period. I don't care if you want a career. That's great. That's amazing. I love it for you. Make no mistake, the work that you do in cultivating your child, rearing up another human being who will have impact on this earth, is far more important than any work that anybody out here is doing. Okay. That goes for fathers too. That goes for fathers too. Father's work is important. Father's presence is important. But I'm going to be real with you. As the people who actually bring human beings into this world, nothing replaces us and the level of importance we have to the individuals that we literally brought into the earth through our bodies. So, her holding the baby for 4 hours, the only problem there is that the Times interviewer is not in touch enough with her womanhood to respect the fact that this woman is taking time out of her day from doing the most important thing she could be doing, which is cultivating and nurturing and tending to the 8 human beings that she brought onto this planet to talk to your little disrespectful butt. So the holding of the baby is not the problem to me. The problem is that this chick doesn't recognize you're very fortunate anybody took time to talk to you. Because in the words of a rapper whose name I don't know, you ain't nobody. You ain't nobody. You're nothing in the grand scheme of people that are in this house. Everybody in that building was more important. Every human being in that building was more important than this Times reporter. Her husband was more important. Every last one of those 8 kids was more important. And Hannah was more important. This interviewer was the least important human being in that house. She's lucky anybody took time for her. So I guess I just see it differently. I just see that very differently. But who's to say that she wanted her husband to look after her baby? That's the assumption. First of all, a breastfeeding baby could not be looked after for 4 hours because the child is breastfeeding. Every mother doesn't want to supplement with a bottle. Every woman doesn't want to shove her breast into a machine and have it substandardly suck out milk and rewarm it and give it to her baby. Every woman is not about that life. Many women only even bother with that because they have to. So she couldn't have been separated from her infant for 4 hours because babies eat more often than that. If you are a mother like me who fed on demand, so some breastfeeding women put their children on a routine. I always breastfed on demand. So when the baby wanted to eat, I breastfed. If the baby was discontent, I breastfed. So sometimes they would be cluster feeding and I would be feeding my baby every 10, 15 minutes. Look, breastfeeding is a whole freaking job by itself, right? Also, maybe she just didn't want to put her baby down. That was my point. Like, once you give birth to a human being, you want to hold them. I like to hold my babies. I would be cooking holding my baby. I would be cleaning holding my baby. I would be out gardening holding my baby. And I didn't even use, y'all, I would really be holding my baby. I didn't even use like front harnesses and slings and all that stuff. I would like literally, I can do anything with one hand. I'm going to tell you right now, I could do anything with one hand. I just need one good arm because I spent the majority of my young adult life with a baby in the other hand. I didn't want to put my babies down. People would be like, why don't you put that baby down? Because I don't want to. I want to hold my baby. Leave me alone, okay? Let me be. I want to hold the baby. This baby is cute and smells good and is mine. I'm holding it. right? So maybe she didn't want to put her baby down. Why does it have to be that the husband is doing something wrong? Why can't it be that she just wants to hold her baby? Why can't that just be what it is? And we just respect that. You know, it's a lot of work. Respect to the hard work of holding your baby. Okay. While you do everything. And not because you have to, because you could put the baby down, but because, dang it, you just want to hold the baby. And you know what's crazy is the baby wants you to hold it. That's what's up too. All right. She points out the fact that she refers to her husband a lot. So, for example, she says, living out here, it must be hard to envision all the millions of eyes watching them. Hannah, even though she calls her Nilman, says, I feel like we're doing what God wants. We're on his errands a little bit, Daniel adds. And then she repeats, we're on his errands a little bit. Right? She's kind of saying it like she's kind of brainwashed. I think that that's not the case. I don't take her husband talking and her being in agreement with him as a negative thing. Me personally. Now, maybe Daniel is super abusive and he's brainwashed her and she's off. I mean, it could be possible. I don't know these people. But I will just say, coming from a healthy marriage, I respect my husband and I look up to him. My husband is my intellectual superior. He is. I personally couldn't be in a relationship with somebody who was dumber than I am. I could not. If you are not intelligent, I personally could not find respect in my heart to be with a man that was beneath me in intelligence. My husband is way more intelligent than me. He is. It just is what it is. I think I have more emotional intelligence than him in some ways, but he also is much cooler minded and has a cooler head than I do. So I guess what I'm saying is I might do the same thing. Sometimes he says things and I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And then I'll incorporate that into my overall, ethos of because he's right sometimes. Like, when you're with somebody that you respect and when you're in sync with somebody with after 8 kids, they better be in sync with each other. You know what I'm saying? You finish each other's sentences. You are one. You know what I mean? Like you're one person. Imma tell you what it's like. My husband, he'll be on the phone. Let's say he'll be sitting outside, sitting in one of the chairs. He'll be on the phone because sometimes he'll come in from work and then he'll like start making his rounds, like talking to different people on the phone. And I'll walk out and he'll be like, babe, da 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 da. And I will interfere in his conversation. Y'all, I will be all involved in the conversation. He'll like put the person on speakerphone. I'll be like chiming in and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Even though this is not my conversation. But that man doesn't have anything going on that I cannot be involved in. And I don't have anything going on that he cannot be involved in. That doesn't mean that we don't have things to ourselves. It's that I don't have things that he is not welcome to. He does not have things that I am not welcome to. Moreover, we respect each other. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Mr. was, and I want to be vulnerable about this because I think with all the toxicity online, we have to like really think about like what does a functional relationship with a man look like? Mr. was the first man that I felt truly respected my mind. He seeks my counsel on so many things that are important to him. And I truly appreciate that. Like, I will never get used to it. He does things that are so big, and he will be like, oh, my wife this, right? My wife that. Babe, what do you think about this? Love him for that. Sometimes it just be like that when you're in a relationship. Also, baby, you came to Ballerina Farm. Hannah is Hannah. Ballerina Farm is their farm. It is a farm that is named Ballerina Farm because Hannah used to be a ballerina. You walked into a house with a woman who has a husband and 8 kids to do an interview. You know what? That interview is her life, and her life is those people in the house. The whole time that she's there, she complains about the fact that the children are around, that the children are kind of talking. She complains about the fact that the husband is talking. This is her life. That is what her life is. Her life is abundant and lively. There are children playing. Let me tell you something. I guess we just move differently. Everybody moves differently, okay? Literally speaking, I'm going to tell you how we really have to be better by women. I'm gonna tell you 2 stories because when I tell the first story, I know some of you guys your hearts aren't gonna be right, and then I'm gonna tell you the second story. Me personally, I'm okay with the sound of children. You guys will know even on these lives, sometimes kids will be in the background and stuff, and I'll be like, "That is so beautiful. I love hearing your baby," because people will be all embarrassed, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my kid, blah blah blah." Heck no. First of all, we shouldn't be doing anything that is so inappropriate our children cannot be around it. Let's be clear. You know what I mean? Like, let's keep our conversation chaste. Let's be on point. If you're in an environment with children, that we're not doing anything that's too far out there. But I love to hear a child. Your child is welcome. In all the business we do over at the Center for the Black community, there is a children's room, and children are welcome at every single thing that we do. Bring your kids. Your children are welcome here. They are welcome to be in the room. They are welcome to play. They are welcome to be around. You guys know, though, I'm extreme. I think that, oh, that is something that is actually in Project 2025. In Project 2025, they want to give employers incentives to have on-site daycare. So employers can be rewarded for providing on-site daycare. People act like children can't be in every space, but people bring their freaking dogs everywhere to work. You know what I'm saying? To me, children are a part of life, and I don't mind children being around. You guys know I worked in an office in the financial district in San Francisco, and I took my baby to work with me. There were lawyers in there. I would be in the office with my baby, okay, while we were conducting business. That's what I'm on. That's the page, that's the tip I'm on, okay? Me personally. Children are welcome. Now, like I said, some of y'all hearts aren't going to be right when you hear me say all this. Some of y'all will be like, children can't be, look, they don't need to be at your orgies. They don't need to be at the nudist beach. You know what I mean? There's places that children don't belong. But 8 places out of 10, the kids can be there. Dang sure if you're in my house and I have kids, I'm not going to tell my kids that they can't be around their own house and can't be around their own mother because of you. Look at my house. When you come to my house, and I'm not going to conform my space because you're here. This is me. This is just my thinking. Now, in the same breath, I was in a meeting with I believe it was the city and the county. And one of the ladies had to pick up her toddler. So she's on Zoom. She's walking, picking up her toddler. She's like, I got to pick up my toddler. We're having a meeting. Next thing I know, this little bouncy curly hair baby. I was like, oh my gosh, your baby is so cute. Do you know what I mean? Because she knew we bring that energy. Me and the women that I work with, that's the energy we bring. Ma'am, go get that baby. And then we're going to stop the meeting and we're going to comment on how cute your baby is and da 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 da. Do you know what I mean? We're going to talk about the family vacation because we love family. We love kids. We love women. See, you guys who aren't with the program have to get with the program. Y'all have to get with the program. You know what I mean? We have these babies everywhere. The babies be all up in the mix. Okay. We love kids around here. We love kids. We love women. Kids come out of women's bodies. Like, bring your baby with you. It's totally fine with us. We love to see it. We will hold a meeting with kids, all of it. We're not about to exclude anybody, because we are pro woman. And this is what I mean. Like, so many people are not pro woman. So many women are not pro woman. We live in a world, remember, before women really started entering the workforce like that in the Western world, the world was built to accommodate men. The way offices work, the way society works was built to accommodate men. Now that us women are all up in here and we're all in these spaces that were traditionally male, we want women to conform to these spaces. Absolutely not. These spaces need to conform to the fact that women are in them now. Women think that we have to conform to a more male way of doing things when the reality is we are fine just the way we are. The world has to realize it has to conform to our presence in spaces that it was not used to having our presence. So everything that is woman and everything that comes with women now has to be accommodated for because we're up in here now. Okay? We're here. It's not just a boys club anymore. And we're not going to play by the boys' game. My needs and what I got going on as a woman are very different from your needs and what you have going on as a man. And we need to stop expecting women to play by men's rules, or it's some sign that something's wrong. She didn't put her baby down. That's something wrong. Oh, the kids are, running around and playing while I'm doing the interview. That's something wrong. No, there's nothing wrong there. It is natural to find children where you find mothers. That makes sense. Do you want us to be like men? Like, we need to even fix the way men are. Because the way in a man's world business is handled is the wife and the children go off into a corner somewhere and business is just handled among adults, right? So then when women enter spaces, you want women to also push aside their families and handle business. How about we let women come with all the things that are attached to them and let that be okay? And stop shaming women for simply being the thing that we've always been and saying that we need to operate more like men or it's unprofessional. We need to operate more like men or it's a sign that, we're not progressive. Progressive is I don't have to not be a mother. I don't have to not be who I am so that you can feel that your interview is conducted professionally. How about you professionally realize you're in my house and this interview is going to be within the comfort of me and my family? How about that? How about we do that? And how about as women, we respect that? How about as women, we do like we did with the chick that had to pick up her baby from childcare and stop our meeting to oogle over the baby, stop our meeting to talk about some mom stuff, and then get back to business. Okay? How about that? How about my little big-eyed son comes up in the camera, smiles, we all comment on how cute he is, and then he goes about his way and we get back to work and it's not unprofessional. It just is what it is because a mother is in this space. And I am no less intelligent, no less efficient, no less effective because I choose to not discard the rest of who I am to accommodate a standard that did not include people like me, women, and mothers when it was established. You know what I'm saying? You honestly doesn't think she gets a minute to herself? Really? This woman is married to a billionaire. You think she doesn't get a minute to herself? Come on now. Come on. You know what's wild though? Is that there's all these people out here who are actually lonely. Like people who are lonely, who have nobody to talk to, nobody to give them a hug, nobody to love on them. Lonely. There are people out here who are actually flipping lonely. And then when somebody has a home full of people that love them, we're like, oh my gosh, you got to be around people all the time. All these people that love you. I'll be joking around with my husband. Because I'll be messing with him or whatever. And he'll be playing grumpy. And I'm like, oh, go complain to your friends. Oh my gosh, my wife kept kissing me. My wife gave me a hug. Oh, my wife keeps kissing my tummy. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, poor me. Poor me. Right? Poor me. Oh, my baby wants to come over here and hug me. Mom, will you come look at the thing I did? My daughter called me upstairs to look at how she organized her jewelry box right before this live. That's another reason I was late. I walked in the house from the walk, and my daughter and I walked directly into my room because I was about to start the live so I could get my computer. And I heard my daughter talking about, hey, Liz, do you want to come see this? And I popped my head back out. I was like, does she want to come see what? She's like, oh, I organized my jewelry box. I was like, can I come see? Oh, poor me. I have a child who would be happy to have their mom come upstairs. But look, when you get old and your kids don't want to be around you, you'll be talking about, but I raised those kids and those kids don't even take care of me and they don't visit me and they don't call me. You know, when you don't have anybody in your life, man, I don't have any friends. I don't have this and that. When you're feeling lonely, you know what I'm saying? Also, life is long. There are stages to life. Right now, if you're a mother and you have children in your home, your stage of life is motherhood. And that's fine. When you were a teenager, your stage of life was being a teenager. When you were a baby, your stage of life was being a baby. When you become elderly, your stage of life will be being old. It's okay. It's okay to bask and enjoy your stage of life. And I'm sure this woman gets out the house. Now, come on, y'all. She's not even poor. This woman is married to a man whose father is a billionaire. Are we really going to act like she doesn't get out the house? We're not going to act like she doesn't get out the house. Come on. Let's try to be reasonable here. I'm not saying that it's not important for mothers to take time and to self-care and to get out the house. Me personally, I never have the house to myself. So this year, Christian went to camp. My daughter was wrangling, like horse wrangling at a camp. And my other daughter was attending a camp for pay. They were paying the kids $500 to go. And so for about 5 hours a day for a week, y'all, I had the house completely to myself. And that was so cool because you know how long it's been? It's been like maybe 3 years since I've had the house completely to myself. Somebody's almost always here. Everybody else in this house has had the house to themselves. Regularly, Mister gets the house to himself. Every once in a while, I'll leave with, all the kids, but leave one kid behind and that kid will get the house to themselves. I rarely get the house to myself. So it was really cool to have the house all to myself. You know what I mean? However, even though I enjoyed it, you know what I enjoy more? I enjoy being with my children because my children will not always be here with me. I have adult children. I have a son I see one time a year. He flies out here for Passover. That's the only time I see him in person. I am glad that when he was in the house, I spent time with him. Eventually, all my children will be gone out of my home. I don't know where in the world that they will choose to live. And in the season that I have them here, yes, it's okay. Trust me, they're all going to leave my home and it's just going to be me and Mister, and I'm going to have all the time I want to myself. But what is very limited is the amount of time that these little ones will be in the home with me. What's very limited is this period in their life where they're looking at their mom and like the things that come out of my mouth have so much meaning to them that the first person they believe and trust is me. That period of time is very limited. Oh, giving children their space? Um, I mean, yeah. I mean, your children should be involved in things and stuff like that. Did your mom not let you be involved in anything? I mean, I love my children and I'm a homemaker, but I also work with a cultural nonprofit. I also teach homeschool black children at the Zykes Institute. I've been doing that for 4 out of the past 5 years. I do a lot of philanthropic work. I teach Sunday school. Like I don't know. So, but my children are the most important thing in my life. My family, Mister, and my kids are under God, obviously, y'all. But you know what I'm saying. So I don't know. Did your mother not allow you to, you know what I'm saying? Did your mother not allow you to do anything? I don't know what you mean. You said, "Do I want my doctor's kid in my appointment?" I did say that 80% of the time it is appropriate, and I did say that, um, there are times where it's a child-free zone. So, do I want my lawyer's kid in a meeting? Is their kid bad? Like, some of y'all need to know how to raise your kids. My kid could be in a meeting. I held a meeting at our center with the city commissioner and her assistant, and my child was there. My 9-year-old was there. He went into, because again, we have a woman-friendly environment. We sat him in the children's room. Everybody went and said hi to him. He remembered, oh, dude, because of the last time he was in a meeting with me. I mean, I brought my daughter to meetings, so I don't know. Now, if I'm getting a pap smear, do I want children in the room then? No. I did say there are times when it is in a child-free zone. When I go out to a lounge with my husband, do I my husband and I were in Napa and we were at a winery and somebody brought in their kids. I don't think that is appropriate. Like we're all in here drinking wine as adults. I don't think even though they allow children in Napa, I don't think that children should be at a in the middle of a tasting room. Me personally. So, yes, I don't wanna get a pap smear. My lawyer's kid, I could have a conversation with a lawyer with a kid in the room. Yes. But like I said, the way that I roll, I would want to see a lawyer's office where the lawyers could bring their children and there was an area for the children to be. You know what I mean? That's why I said I really like that in Project 2025, them incentivizing employers to have childcare there and available so that your children can be in the place that you work. And you can just leave and go check on your babies, leave and go check on your toddler. So, yes. I mean, we don't know. That's the thing is we're not in these people's lives, so we don't know. I think she said in this interview or in another interview that she was going to put a ballet studio together when her daughters were older and she would teach them to do ballet. But we don't know. We don't know. Why would we assume that it's a negative reason that that is a um classroom? Why would we assume that there's something negative about that? Like I feel like that is imposing something in the situation that nobody said. Right? Automatically thinking that there's something negative about it. Why would the automatic thing be that there was something negative? Well, I'm sure she didn't share it like that, right? I'm sure she didn't share it like her husband allowed her ballet studio in their home to be turned into a classroom. Did she say, I'm angry that my husband turned my ballet studio into a classroom? Or did she just state it as a fact? Like my ballet studio, we made that into a classroom. So I guess that's my question. Like, are you imposing the negativity on it? Or did she say it in a negative way? Um, let's go into trad wives. This is a good segue. Trad wives are an internet phenomenon. And there's all these, their lifestyle is often, though not always, bound to Christianity. They film themselves cooking mad things from scratch, chewing gum from corn syrup, waffles from sourdough starter. Okay, so let's be clear. Let's talk about trad wives. There is, and this is what I will say, there is a fetishization of trad wives. It's a fetish. Now, as somebody that makes a lot of things from scratch, I will tell you at different seasons in my life, I did make different things from scratch, right? So when my children were very young and I had more time, so I was doing a lot less philanthropic work. I wasn't like my time was not stretched as thin. I preferred to do everything. So I would make my pastas by hand, I would hand dry them. I did everything from scratch, like everything. I would do all my sauces from scratch, everything. Now in this particular season of my life where I have just a lot of philanthropic work that I'm involved in, I do not make every single thing from scratch. I still do bake. I still do a lot of from scratch cooking, but I also have some alternatives. So for example, I will make my spaghetti sauces from scratch, but also I have like Trader Joe's jarred spaghetti sauce in there. And sometimes I'll just cut up some tomatoes, cut up some onions and, vegetables, and I will just add it, like I will saute it and then I will add that sauce to it, which honestly, by the time in reality I cut all that up, I could also do the tomatoes, but whatever. I'm just telling y'all honestly what I do. I still make my breads from scratch for sure, but for example, whereas in my slower season of life, I would always make my, like, hamburger buns and stuff from scratch. I am not against buying hamburger buns, right? I have done it. I mean, I don't do it a lot, but I definitely do it. We got a new grill and we grill a lot, and I didn't make any of those hamburger buns, okay? So I'm taking a grilling, but I'm, like, not really feeling making the hamburger buns, so I buy them. Um, but Imma tell you what I never did was make chewing gum, because ain't nobody got time for that. So this is what I mean by the fetishization of trad wives. The reality is nobody has time to make freaking chewing gum unless you have a brand new baby and you're not doing anything with yourself. But when you got a house full of kids, I'm not making chewing gum. First of all, I'm not about to give any kids chewing gum. Who's doing that? Nobody's doing that out here. Chewing gum will be in people's hair, it'll be in your carpet. Like, I'm not giving out chewing gum. no less making it from scratch. So, like, some of these things that these trad wives are off doing, like, I'm gonna make gummy bears from scratch. I mean, I guess, but like, you got a lot of time on your hands if you're making gummy bears from scratch. You better let me bake you a muffin because it's way more cost effective and way healthier for me to just bake you a blueberry muffin. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not about to be pulling out ingredients that you only see in a lab to cook from scratch. That is just me personally with, being a mother of almost 30 years, having half a dozen children or more, me personally, cooking from scratch for most of my adult life, being a homemaker for most of my adult life. I'm not doing all that. Okay, I'm not about to go tap the maple tree for syrup and boil it down and all that. I'm not doing it. That is just fetish, all right? And I think we really need to separate the fetish. Okay, see? But did you have time on your hands? Was that like a group activity? You know what I'm saying? Like, shout out to you for doing that. I wouldn't do it, but shout out to you, right? So, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, Nancy, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. You said it's better when there are more generations doing childcare because it robs the mother and children when the mother does it all. Oh, I don't know what you mean, Nancy. Maybe I missed one of your comments. Oh, I'm not addressing the issue that they have? It's not against Hannah, it's against him. Well, I mean, when you portray somebody as a victim, as if they are unhappy, it is kind of against you. Do you know what I mean? You guys are saying I'm avoiding what people are saying about him. So why don't you guys tell me what people are saying about him? Can you do that? Let me see. I'll put the link in the chat. You guys can tell me what people are saying about him. I mean, that he's oppressive? I think I addressed that. You guys come up and tell me what people are saying so we can address it. Because, I mean, I just don't see the problem. I think a lot of it, she says that she talks in a voice that is so soft, she sounds as though she has been brainwashed by a cult. How is this respectful toward her? Like, help me understand. How is that respectful? Maybe she's talking soft because she's holding a baby. So, yeah, I guess my focus is on her because she's the one that's being drugged in this article after she opened up her home to somebody. She looks unhappy. Does that look unhappy? I don't know. In which photo did she look unhappy? Does she look unhappy there? Does she look unhappy there? How about there? Does she look unhappy there? Hold on a second, y'all. Speaking of which, one second. I have a little one that hurt themselves on a bike, but y'all come upstairs if you want to. Okay, sorry, you guys. We had a bike accident. All right, so Tiffany says people act like career women aren't looking tired and looking burnt out and tired. I mean, true. I'm not trying to work a 9 to 5. Hey, what are your thoughts?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the issue that people have with Ballerina Farm is that it seems pretty obvious that her husband hates her.
Oh,
And the reason
okay.
we say that is because the amount of resources and help that she has is not on par with the volume of her workload. So, for example, she has 8 kids and they run a farm, and she's also a content creator and they sell products for the content. So, they have multiple businesses going on, and yet he doesn't want to have a nanny for the kids. There's also a part in the article where he mentions that on a regular basis, she spends a week in bed from exhaustion. And
Yeah,
so
I remember that part. Let's try to find it. Go ahead.
yeah. And so the thing is, if you see that she's exhausted, that tells us that the amount of help that she has is not adequate for the amount of work that she has on her plate. And yet he's the one who doesn't want to have a nanny. And
Okay.
so it's just like, do you
Okay.
enjoy?
So let's actually talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's find the part. So first I will say the farm is on a lot of acres. I doubt the two of them are doing all the work on the farm. Like that's surely they have staff. There's no
Yeah,
way.
they have staff for
Right.
the farm and the business.
Right. As far as exhaustion, I will tell you I will tell you this. I can't say because we're not in their home, but I'm going to tell you from my own experience the martyr syndrome that some mothers have. So, and I was actually talking to my girls about this just the other day. Like, I'm not even kidding, maybe not even 5 days ago. I was in the kitchen, I was talking about this. I was saying how I used to be the sort where I would make things harder on myself that didn't have to be. So it wasn't even that people weren't offering to help me. Like people would be like, "Oh, do you want help with this?" or "Oh, do you, need this?" or and I would just say no even though I really wanted help. Something about the struggle of it, like doing it all myself and um somehow choosing and I'm not saying she's doing this. I'm just saying some of you women may have been this person, right? Um, Something about choosing to do everything in the most difficult way humanly possible and putting that pressure on myself. That's why I started doing like some things differently. Like I said, I made everything from scratch. And then when my schedule picked up, I would be like, "Oh, well, I have to." I'll give you like a real life example. I have to clean the kitchen, and I'm a person that does things really methodically. I have to do the laundry. I have to fold the clothes. I have to, write this grant. I have to take this meeting, all these things. And my husband was like, "How come you just don't have the kids clean the kitchen? Like, make them chore lists, put it up on there." And I was like, "Well, they're not gonna do it right, blah, 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 only I'm gonna do it perfectly, like, so I'm gonna be the one to do it, et cetera," right? So, it made it so that I literally wasn't anything in my house, getting help. At one point, he was like, "Yeah, you can go ahead and hire, like, a maid or, something like that," and I was like, "Oh, well, okay," and then I did an interview with somebody, and, you know, I didn't do the follow through or whatever. My point is that I was making choices that were making my life harder, and one day I was just like, "You know what? Y'all can load and unload the dishwasher." You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
gonna buy I love making stuff from scratch, but you know what? Sometimes after a day of, like, meetings over at the center, I don't wanna come here and literally make everything from scratch. So, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to, like, buy the jar of Trader Joe's, tomato, what is it called? Marinara, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think we're not and that's why I say we're not in the house. I know that sometimes women we feel we have to be a superwoman. It's kinda like I wouldn't have gone to that pageant. I wouldn't have gone, right? But
Mhm.
something about her personality, clearly, she still wanted to go.
Yeah.
You know what
And I
I mean?
agree with you that sometimes women do have this martyr complex, but it does say in the article that he's the one who doesn't want to have nannies. And so I think
Okay,
there's
let's take
multiple
a look
things
at that. I'm
happening
gonna
at the
find it
same
while you're
time.
talking.
They're Mormon, and so I feel like there's this standard of perfectionism and really putting forth like a pristine image that she has bought into. So I agree with you on she's probably being a martyr and she probably gets some sense of satisfaction out of doing things the most difficult, painstaking way possible. But he also doesn't want her to have a nanny. And
Well,
then
they
I
do have
think,
a tutor, it looks like, because they're doing the interview, and she says that, the 2 of them, right,
yeah,
are Daniel's driving in the front. Neilman has Hannah, I don't know why she won't use her name, has the toddlers in the back. And then she says the other school kids are being homeschooled in the barn. So obviously she's not homeschooling them. So they do have some kind of help. They've got people working
yeah.
on the farm. They've got somebody teaching the kids. They have a maid, I know. Um, but they don't have childcare.
The only time they have childcare is when they have date night once a week, from what I recall in the article. So
Which I
yeah,
think is appropriate. I mean, do you think there's something wrong with that?
I think that if you're running a business, the scale of what they're doing, and you have 8 kids, she probably needs more help with the kids than what she has,
Do you think
even
that
with the
she
fact that
is
they have a
running
tutor.
Do you think that she is actually running Ballerina Farm, or do you think she is actually the face of Ballerina Farm? I think she's more the face. I don't think she's like managing the farm hands and, doing the day-to-day operations. I think she does go out there and milk a cow and then carry the milk inside, but like that's her choice. I'm sure they have people working on the farm, and if she really wanted milk, they could milk the cow for her. Do you know what I mean? And just bring the fresh milk to her. Do you follow what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, I agree that they have help in the farm. I'm pretty sure she's not in like the weeds of it every day, but they still are at least on a operational CEO, COO type level, having to manage the business day in and day out. I don't see a version of reality where someone is running a business the size of the business they have and have 8 kids and don't need a nanny.
Um, it's really hard to say. Like, it's hard for me to say because this is what I'll say. In our home, right? I as the homemaker, I spend about 10, I would say 9 months out of the year homeschooling through the Zyx Institute. So teaching classes, and I teach a lot of, I mean, last year I taught a lot of classes. I taught 7th through 12th grade. So that's a lot of students, right?
Yeah.
And then that requires like then checking their work, coming up with the curriculum and assignments. Do you know what I mean? Dealing with parents, all of that. I have a client. I talk to you guys about this a lot, where we have the center. So we have a food security program that runs. I do all of the grant writing for that. I do all of the paperwork for that. I do all of the like community connections, like building relationships with our community partners. I formatted the program. I even taught one of the cooking classes. And then we have the center itself, and then that center has a lot of programming. So, I'm basically, I think this year I will be raising close to $1 million, about $800,000, and assisting, like I said, while I was trying to take a walk with my daughter, I was also taking a meeting with the president of our local NAACP branch because we need them to show up for this meeting tomorrow that we're kind of having in a rush because we have a bit of a crisis. My husband has a nonprofit as well where he mentors Black boys. And I do like all of the flyers, not just for that nonprofit, but then he does like all of these programs for Black people. So, like, we're doing all of those things as well. I also Sunday school, I also homeschool myself. So, I have children in this home that I homeschool, and I don't fully homeschool them through the Zyx curriculum. So I homeschool them personally myself. I don't have a maid. Like, I actually never took my husband up on that. I really need to. So slap on the back of the hand for me for that. And I do most of the care for my home. The things that I allocated out to my children were like, everybody does their own laundry, even my youngest, but I fold his clothes. And the kitchen and the floors, but when they do it, it's kind of like getting the basics done, and then I have to like go really do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm pointing out all that to say that that's my life that I live right now, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I try to, and I haven't been successful, and that's why you've not seen me on YouTube, make time for my hobby, which is doing YouTube. And so I'm rattling all that off, and I don't have childcare.
So you have a lot on
I'm
your
not
plate.
suffering, do you know what I mean? And I'm also
Yeah.
not married to a billionaire either, so I'm not even as privileged as she is.
And you do have a lot on your plate, but does everything that you have on your plate bring you to the place where you're frequently in bed for a week at a time due to exhaustion?
No, and
Right.
that's why I said I can tell something about her personality, and I don't think it's about her life for 1 second.
If you guys can still hear me, I'm
Oh,
gonna comment on what Brianna has said on the screen. Can you be a
yeah.
trad wife if you work? I honestly don't think that she's a trad wife. I think she's a modern woman, and people just think she's a trad wife because she's on a farm. So, like, the aesthetic of it makes people think that she's a trad wife, but she runs a business and she's responsible for the bulk of the housework and the child rearing, which is the case for most working women today. So I don't even see her as a trad wife, honestly.
So for me, I've never known a stay-at-home mother that didn't work. And I would not advise for stay-at-home moms not to work. From a Christian perspective, that trad wife was an entrepreneur. She was also a businesswoman, right?
Yeah.
And every woman that I've known who has been a homemaker has had a job. And what I mean by that is like it could be I remember my grandma, and a lot of you might know people that did this at my grandpa's church. So she didn't work a traditional job, but she started like a daycare at the church. And because we're Christians and we were conservative, there were a lot of like cousins, and like all of us cousins would just like be at the church at the daycare, and that was like her job, right? And she was really just taking care of her grandkids. I knew a woman, and she like did baking. She baked a lot of cakes for some of my baby showers, and that was like her thing that she did. She basically had a small little baking business, and she would bake cakes for the people that were around. Me, I have like all of the philanthropic work that I do. I don't know many stay-at-home mothers that don't have I think that goes more with the fetishization part that I was talking about. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people fetishize trad wives, and in reality, there's very few women who do nothing. I would never advise that either. And it's not just because your husband might leave you one day, although that's possible. It's because I remember, you guys know that I'm on my second marriage, and I've always been a stay-at-home mother. So let me have a really honest conversation with you guys. The first time I didn't work at all. I didn't work at all. So I lived in this penthouse, and my husband made good money, and I did not work at all. And when my first marriage ended, it was really difficult because luckily I didn't need to work because my family has money, but trying to get into the workforce, I only had experience um helping with my husband's business, like managing, working kind of like as executive assistant to him. So I didn't work outside of the home. And so that's really hard to put on a resume per se.
Yeah.
And also I didn't have any money. Like in that situation, I didn't even have my own bank account. I would never advise that for a woman. Now, I'm the same now. I'm still a stay-at-home mother, same as I've always been pretty much my whole adult life. And that time where I was talking about that I like was kind of changing over my life and like the way that I approached being a mother, that was really based on that first experience, my marriage I had when I was really young and like early in my life. So I will have to say that that was a mistake, and I would never advise any other woman to do that. And looking back on it pragmatically, when I think about the women I grew up around and the way that I was raised, everybody worked. Everybody had a hustle. It was normally something that they did that allowed them to still be a stay-at-home mother. But I didn't know a lot of women that didn't work. And I find when women um, don't have something else, even if it's just philanthropy, things you're not getting paid for, I find that those do end up being women that tend to be like in more abusive situations, that tend to be isolated. So I want to be clear, like, I don't think that that can't not happen. I'm just saying I don't think that's her. I think that she's a little bit masochistic. I'm just going to keep it real, because you have to be. That's why I said, like, hats off to her that she did that beauty pageant. But I think that tells us something. I don't think it has to be him. I think that tells us something about her. And all of her kids are still really young. I'm a mom. My eldest child is almost 30. So I'm looking back to who I was when I had a house full of kids like her that were that little. And without guidance of an older woman that was wise and around me, like the way that I behaved. And I would do crap like that. I would do crap like I wouldn't do that. But I'll tell you guys an example of something similar I did, like how she gave birth, and then like fresh off of bleeding and a swollen chest full of milk, she made the decision to go and do the Mrs. World pageant. I did something similar to that. I gave birth to a child and decided to bake a giant pot of spaghetti and a cake and like put it all in a cart and then like walk the streets of San Francisco and hand out homeless people food while my baby was just strapped to my chest. Like just what the frick? You know, what was I thinking? That was really, you know what I mean? Like what was I on? Like, oh, I'm feeling like really like I just want to give back. I want to like, go out and do this. And that was just dumb and it was unnecessary. Who knows where my mind was, but my point is that she's giving me that energy and I don't know that that ends up being her husband's fault. I think she just has some growing to
Yeah.
do as a woman and a mother, and she might have something to prove, or she might be a super high achiever, but that's not indicative of abuse. That's indicative
Yeah.
of a personality type. And if she is exhausting herself because she's making choices like giving birth and then instead of just passing on the pageant, I can do it, I must do it. And then you get home and you are like, whoa, wiped. If he really had control over her, he would have been like, no, you can't do the pageant. You're always overextending yourself and getting
Yeah.
exhausted. He might just be like, okay, or if you want to, do you know what I mean? Like, do
And I
that.
think
And then
that
she
two things can
passes
be
out, and
true
he
at the
was
same.
like, okay, I'll take care of the kids while you're passed out. And then she pops up, overdoes it again. And maybe he's not, maybe what his fault is he's not checking his wife and just laying down, like, okay, like my husband did. And now you're going to allocate. And now we're
Yeah.
not anymore. You're doing too much. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And I think two things can be true at the same time. Like she can have a really high perfectionistic masochistic standard for herself and she gets some sort of satisfaction out of the glory that comes from that. But I think the reason he allows it and the reason he doesn't check her is because he also gets glory and satisfaction. Like if he loved her, he would check her. But because he gets glory out of saying my wife was in a beauty pageant 12 days after giving birth, he doesn't check her. And so I feel like that, you know, two things can be true at the same time. I agree with what you said earlier about women who are predominantly like housewives or stay-at-home moms should have something going on. And I feel like with this conversation, there's a lot of conflation of categories because a lot of people think that biblical womanhood is being a trad wife. But those women that didn't work, they were not Proverbs 31 women. Like you said earlier, like we know the Proverbs 31 woman was very industrious. She had multiple streams and avenues of incomes and charity work that she did and things of that nature. But the 1950s trad wives, they did not work. They literally kept the home and reared children, and that was it, and that was all. And so that's why I say that she's not a trad wife, because she does more than just keeping the home and rearing the children. She works just like any other modern day woman works. And not only does she work, she has multiple businesses. So I think that's another issue, is that we're conflating categories, like I was saying earlier, because we see her in this antiquated aesthetic, you know, the context of a farm. People think trad wife, but when you look at the mechanics of her life, there's nothing similar to the 1950s trad wives, because those women, they didn't work at all.
I think I was just talking to my. First of all, hi Irene, I missed you. I was just talking to my friend about this, but I think my problem is that when people see these individuals on TikTok and on Instagram, they get very mad and they'll be like, "Oh, she's not a traditional trad wife because her income is from Instagram." But like you were saying, Irene, um, there's you should have some type of personal hobby that you should be doing as a stay-at-home mom or a housewife, and as if it makes you money as like a little side pocket, it's even better. But I think it's really scary how people people don't really get to experience what it's like to be in a household with a stay-at-home mom or a housewife, to where
Yeah.
they don't even know what a housewife is. That's why they think these trad wives, that's why they're even calling them trad wives, or that's why they think that these trad wives aren't being truly traditional like they should, or how the standard of a traditional housewife is what a housewife looked like in the 50s, when housewives have been, housewives since the dawn of time, I think that's our main issue, that our society's in this place right now where so many women are are working and are forced to work in these male focused jobs that
Yeah.
they don't really know what a housewife or a stay-at-home mom or a trad wife is.
I feel like the trad wife was not a good model. The 1950s trad wife, I want to be very specific, was not a good model because, like Irene said, what happens if you're being abused? What happens, if you get cheated on? What happens if you become a widow? It's so funny. I had a job where I worked at a Christian company, and there was another woman. I was working in kind of like an administrative entry level position, and there was another woman in her 50s who got hired into that position the same time as me. And she had been a stay at home mom for the majority of her life. And then her husband had died in some weird freak accident. And so when she was in, I think maybe at the time, her mid 40s or her late 40s, she had to go out into the workforce. And like Irene said, she had a hard time finding work. And then she was finally able to get hired in at the company that I got hired into. We got hired at the same time. And so it's just like, imagine being a woman almost 50 years old and having the freedom and the autonomy of being a stay-at-home wife and a mother. And then your husband dies, and now you have to go into an entry-level position and be in the same position as a post-college graduate age student, when all that time she was at home and, being a stay-at-home wife and a stay-at-home mother, she could have been building a business or doing something industrious so that she could have her own means financially. So I feel like even the 1950s trad wife is not a picture of wisdom and not really a picture of biblical womanhood, because we see that feminism was the byproduct of that model where women were being abused. Women, didn't have opportunities and were being taken advantage of. And so they lashed out against that. And then we got the stupid feminist movement.
Yeah. I see what you're I see what you're saying. I think it is important looking at 1950s, but also just to also recognize women as homemakers where their work and their focus is primarily within the home is way older than that, and mostly because of biology. Do you know what I mean? Because when women give birth and then they are nursing, it naturally binds you to your child. So I think it has to be said that we are made to be with our children. Like that's actually our physical design. That codependence is natural. And so it makes sense that then households are kind of revolve around the fact that in those first years of life, a woman is so needed. Even after that breastfeeding stage, like for those early stages of development, a mother is really needed. I think that she doesn't need a nanny. I hired 2 nannies, and this is why I never used childcare again. Having a nanny full time is really essentially hiring a surrogate mother. Childcare is the same way. This becomes the primary caregiver for your child. And I've told stories about the experiences with my 2 nannies before on this channel, so I won't tell them again. But that experience let me know that like having a nanny is not something that I really wanted to do. And I think we have to like respect if that's not the case. And if her husband said that's something I don't want, like for our children, it's really important to me that their primary caregiver be you, their mother. It doesn't matter that they have a lot of money. I think getting that personal time out in a way is important. And if she's getting that, then I don't think it's abuse for her to not have a nanny. Um, yeah, that's what I would say. I'm going to let you guys drive this briefly. I'll be here listening because speaking of being a trad wife that's doing other things, I have somebody calling me. So I'm going to take this call while I listen to you guys in your comments.
May I ask though, what is the obsession with the 50s trad wife? As if, because I'm not aware that, certain decades have a housewife culture. What and Irene was talking about this earlier where people are cosplaying as a trad
Yeah.
wife and you see that one lady who is dressed straight out of the 1950s. But what's this big obsession with the 1950s and having to have that housewife aesthetic from that time period?
Hey, I could speak on this a little bit. I didn't get to say hi to Irene though, but I was just gonna say I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in the 1950s it was the time of innovation. So it was a time when they were coming out with the microwave and they had like the refrigerator and they had the dishwasher. And so all of these quote unquote at that time newer inventions were available and accessible to the common woman. And so it gave her like a freedom to feel like she could be really domesticated but yet modern. And also it was it was a time where America especially was very prosperous, so you could actually have a man working and still provide for his whole household, and they had things they could have like these new inventions in their house. So it was like very glamorous for like the regular woman could feel glamorous. Whereas
Hmm.
before, like in the 30s and 20s, they had to work hard. Like they had to make everything from scratch. Whereas the 1950s woman, she could like give you a microwave dinner and like keep her nails looking cute still, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I didn't even think about that at all. My immediate thought to her question is that I think because 1950s is kind of sort of recent history, that is the only reference that most American women I think have or what it looks like to be a housewife. Whereas I don't know where you guys stand in terms of your, religious standpoints, but Irene's a Christian and I'm a Christian. So when I read the Bible, I see other models of womanhood, and I see other models of being a housewife. Like we mentioned, the Proverb 31 woman, like obviously during biblical times, women didn't go to work the way they do today, but that woman still worked. Like she bought fields and she sold merchandise and things. So I feel like the obsession with 1950s is that that's the only reference point that they have of what it would look like to not be in the workforce.
Yeah, maybe so. Um, I think it's also worth noting that that Proverbs, and this might tie into Mormonism, which I think is, they're a little lost, but um, she woke up before everybody else in her household and she
Yeah.
began working. So she was very, very much a hard worker, very much industrious. Um, and there were other models of women. I mean, we had, Deborah, who was judge over all of Israel. But it doesn't tell us a lot about what her household looked like, but we know that she did judge over all of Israel. Um, I think that when I look at this article, my first instinct is to defend the fact that it was a nasty article, that was a violation of trust, and it exposed a lot of self-hatred that women have about womanhood, right? This idea that if you are at home and you are having several children, and you are in these positions, that is an oppressive way to be. That innately things that come biologically with being female are inferior and oppressive. That's like the first thing. The second thing is kind of what we're all talking about, which is this fetishization of an image of what traditional wives are, and women kind of triggering other women by like cosplaying over the top versions of this. Like, and that even comes to the dress. Like, I don't wear um a full, ensemble when I clean. First of all, that's disgusting. I don't want to be like in a bathroom or even leaning over my kitchen sink and like cleaning in a cute outfit because I don't want to ruin my outfit. So
Think
I
about
wear
the bleach that
something that I
ruined it.
don't mind getting grimy, when I'm cleaning. So I think that goes into like the cosplay of it and the fetishization of it. Um, but I think that when you add fetishization to women who look down on motherhood and the things that come with being a woman because somehow maleness and male ways are better, those two things smashing together in my eyes, are the reaction to this article. Also, just some straight up jealousy that she's beautiful, married to somebody rich. And also, it's crazy how the dynamic of the argument changes, right? Because the criticism of rich people often is they probably don't even raise their kids. So then she's raising her kids, so then that's bad, right?
Mm.
The criticism often is, one way, and then when somebody does it the other way, that's bad. So in some ways you can't win. And I think, that should be acknowledged as well.
Yeah. I do think there is kind of a new era of woman coming in. I'm thinking about the point that you made of, if rich people have nannies, people say, oh, they don't raise their kids, but now they're giving her backlash because she does raise her children. I feel like there are a lot of women now who, like, I feel like the whole looking down on having a nanny thing is from a previous generation. When I go on TikTok and I hear younger millennials and Gen Z, and I'm a millennial, by the way, but when I hear younger millennials and Gen Z speak about, that type of lifestyle, they're not looking down on having a nanny so much. Like, we don't see, I think Gen X women think that there's this kind of complex of like, it's a flex to kill yourself. And that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about her being a masochist. Whereas younger generations, we don't think that killing yourself is a flex. Like, we want resources, we want help. And so I think that's why you're hearing the narrative shift a little, because I think it would have been older millennials and Gen X women who would criticize a wealthy woman for having a nanny, because they come from the generation where it's a flex to kill yourself. Because I think Gen X was probably the first or maybe the second generation of women who grew up with their mothers in the workforce, and then they went into the workforce as well. So now this is like the first or second generation of women who are burning the candles at both ends, going to work all day and then keeping the home and rearing the children, until the late hours of the night. And so I feel like they coped with that by making it a badge of honor that they suffered. And I think that maybe Ballerina Farm has this sort of complex too. But us younger girls, we don't see that as a badge of honor. We're like, if you have the resources and you need the help, get the housekeeper, get the nanny, get the catered food or the personal chef if you have the resources for that. So I think that's also why you're seeing what seems to be a flip-flop in terms of the reaction to having help.
I mean, it could be. I would have to say that I don't think nannies are a great idea, unless it's a trusted family member. And I also would say that I don't think daycare is an ideal idea, because you will leave, and I say you as in the collective, right? We will leave our children with people we don't know. But we would not give those people like our debit card or our credit card, or the PIN number, or access to our bank account. We would not do that, but we'll leave like a whole human being and
Yeah.
just trust that that person's going to be okay with our child. Also, you're kind of, again, hiring a parent. In order for women to do some things, the biological reality is the kids need care, right? So if the mother does not provide that care, then that means somebody has to surrogate. And that ends up being your childcare provider. I think that women have gotten out of touch with the critical role that motherhood plays in child development. And I think that for whatever reason that I don't understand, we feel the need to prove that we can do all these other things. And the only way that we're able truly, unless you have an environment like the one that I suggested, which is that we accept women and the fact that women bear children and the fact that children have to be attached to their mothers for several years after they're born, and create accommodations in the spaces of the world and the work world that cater to women and how we are biologically designed, right? If we're not doing that, then the only other thing to do is then to pay people to do the job that women would naturally do. And then tell women that thing is not necessary. Even though by the fact that we have to pay somebody to do it, we know it is necessary, right? That would be like me saying it's not necessary to clean your house, so you can go about your life and do everything else and never clean your house. But because it is necessary to clean your house, I promote hiring a maid, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is the job is necessary, it needs to be done. But the only way to separate the person who should be doing it from the job is to then surrogate, right? Hire that thing out. And that goes back to my idea of women having self hate. I think that we walked into, like I was ranting about earlier, a man's world that was set up for men who, whether, and I don't think we got the short end of the biological stick, but a lot of women subconsciously, I think, do think we got the short end of the biological stick, are able to go out into the world and work and get involved in things, and nothing about their biology requires that to be attached to another person. Whereas a woman, we don't have that option biologically. We are the people that carry a baby in our body. We're the people that birth the baby. We're the people that are down for the count after birthing the baby. We're the people producing the milk to feed the baby. We're also the people that emotionally children need to be mentally healthy for several years after they're born. And so for us to go out and get the job and do all the things, we then have to abandon our biology, right? The biological connection that we have to our children to make that happen. And women have been trying so hard to make us and who we are fit into the male model. And I think what we really need to do is say that, okay, it's okay for us to do all those things, but the model needs to change so that it fits women and we are not like them. And we have different needs to participate in a healthy way without sacrificing all of the things that biologically are required of us as women, and that those things are not bad and those things are not negative and there is nothing wrong with them, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, like, outside of Ballerina Farm, that is kind of the energy that I was getting from all of the commentaries that I was hearing and the things that I was reading, was just a lot of self-hate, just a lot of women hating womanhood in general, hating the model, saying it was oppressive, saying it was bad, finding a fault in, like, not having childcare, those sorts of things. And I just feel like that is just indicative of the fact that nobody, collectively, women are not respected, and our contribution to literally humanity is not respected. And because it is not respected, we don't find value in it, and it's easy for us to pick it and tear it apart and shame and put down women who live those types of lives. And like I said, just to be super redundant, I don't think it helps then that you have women that are turning homemaking into a joke by cosplaying it and doing stupid things like wearing silk dresses while making, no offense to the lady in the chat that tried this, gummy bears from scratch. It's like, for real?
So for the gummy bears, that was me, and I just want to clarify, I did it one time, and it was I was pregnant at the time, actually, and I was home. I wasn't able to work at that particular time. I was like 6 months pregnant, and my kids are homeschooled now, but one of my older kids was I think he was in kindergarten, and I wanted to make gummy bears to give to the kids for Valentine's Day in X's and O's. And I did it, and it was way too much work and too much time. I have no idea why I did it, but I know why I did it. It was because I was by myself at home all day, and I was pregnant, and I had nothing else to do. Now, would I do it now again? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of turning homemaking into a joke. And And I get it, it makes them money. But I also think we are so undervalued and underrespected as women. Like I don't personally find women who cosplay being homemakers cute. I also think when women who don't have children cosplay homemaking, that I don't think that's cute either. It's like you don't even have kids in the house. You don't know what it's like to have to do that when you have several children underfoot. Like it's not realistic. Like you should just look like this all the time and you should. Now don't get me wrong, I do try to put myself together before my husband comes home. Um, when he works from home, I'm like, "Oh, man, that means I have to kind of, like, shove around with him here all day." So there's some stuff, honestly, I won't do when he's here because I also recognize, you know, it's nice to see your wife other than date nights, like, dressed up and stuff, but I'm not about to be around here in a pair of 3-inch heels and a dress doing anything. Like, first of all, it's not comfortable. Second of all, who's really funding that? You know what I mean? Because things get ruined when you clean. So do you really wanna fund me having to constantly rebuy clothes because I'm, like, bleaching stuff in lace? I mean, it just I don't know. So, I think there's a level of ridiculousness to it, and it's all very disrespectful to women on the whole. And I just think we need to stop being the purveyors of our own disrespect.
I wanted to say something about Black women in general, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
sort of a stay-at-home mom. I mean, I am, but I'm also doing a lot of other things as well, and because I have to. But when my kids were a little younger, like when I was still breastfeeding and stuff, I was really just mostly at home. Like when I, was doing that because they were always there. But my point is, like, I think for Black women especially, we don't get told that we can just stay home. Like, no one really even told me that. And my parents are married and they're still married. But no one told me, like, they didn't tell me when I was younger that it would be a good idea for me to stay at home with my kids when they were young. They kind of gave me the idea that I needed to take care of myself and that I needed to be able to take care of my family if I ever wanted one. And I don't think we're giving our women, like, a lot of them aren't giving their girls the right message. They're not giving their girls a message that, like, hey, you need to try to set yourself up because there's going to be a season in your life where it's really important to be there with your kids. And it's about the attachment that they have. It's about their health. It's really important. Like, sending them to daycare causes them to be avoidant. It's not healthy for the child overall when you do that to them, especially when they're at a really young age. And you can look at books on this and psychology in this, and they're just ignoring this fact. Like, people are just ignoring this fact that it's not healthy for them.
Yeah, and a lot of people think you need to have money to be a stay-at-home mom. And this is why I like to share, like, the period of time between my first and second marriage because, um goodness, see, and this is gonna end up making this live that does not really have to be private, but, um, I'm just gonna tell this story. So I told you guys what it was like, without experience really in anything or even knowing how to write, like, a resume. Like, I just had never had to work. Even in my youth, I had little jobs, but they weren't, like, real jobs, and I didn't really care if I lost them or not. It wasn't relevant. I didn't have to work because I was being cared for by my husband, and when my first marriage ended, I didn't even know how to write a resume. I did not know how to get out in the workforce. Like, I just didn't know anything. And I ended up meeting, a woman who knew a rich Indian dude, and basically, she just wanted him to leave her alone, like, she was managing one of his properties, and he was always, because he didn't, I guess, have anything else to do, coming by and, like, micromanaging her, and it got on her nerves. And so she was like, "I'm gonna introduce you to him and get him to hire you as his personal assistant." Which is exactly what she did. She introduced me to him. His name was Nitin. She introduced me to him. I became his personal assistant. I really didn't have to do much. Like, he would have me, like, he was weird. You know, he was very wealthy, but he would get obsessed over, like, little savings of money. So, like, he would want me to check, like, all the pens and, like, put the pens aside that had ink and throw the pens away that didn't have ink. Like, that would be, like, my day, right? And then eventually he started introducing me to his business partners and being like, "Oh, I know this, like, girl, she'll be great for that." And because I had been being a helpmeet to my husband that whole time, I really fit in nicely in this group of really, really wealthy Indian dudes, you know? And I would like be this person's personal assistant. And then I moved on to being this person's executive assistant. And then I went on to managing their real estate and property portfolios. And then I went on to doing like their city negotiations with them. And that like built up. And during all this time, right? I had my little ones. Like I had just had a baby. The younger of my two daughters, to be specific. And I did not have a lot of money at this time. I remember praying to God, like, and I was doing everything from scratch. I did have a family with money, but I think I've talked about this, and I did have to make that video private because a lot of people are like, "You come from a place of privilege. You don't know what it's like." Because I made a comment about in this world, you have to be strong, like, you cannot be weak, and people were really coming down on me because they see how my life is now, and I was sharing the fact that my mom was very abusive toward me. She used to tie me up to beds, like, we had a lot of money, but she was, like, beating the hell out of me, like, throwing me in a tub full of water and then beating me with an extension cord, but in a tub naked full of water. If you can imagine being 7 and somebody dunking you in water and beating you in the water because it was less likely to leave welts, and then having to get up and go to Catholic school. Do you know what I mean? So I got tortured as a child. And so even though my family had money, when my husband and my relationship broke up, like I said, I had just had a baby, right? I gave birth right after we separated. And I was staying in one of my mother's homes, and there was an incident that I don't want to get emotional, so I won't go into that happened. And I had literally just given birth, and my younger children were concurrently like all running fevers together. And I had just given birth like 24 hours before. And I had a like really scary incident with my mom, and I was like, okay, I can't stay here. And so I picked up my babies and I picked up my newborn, and I went to stay in essentially a commercial building. Like we had a friend who owned a natural hair care salon, and my mom's estranged husband was like an electrician, and his electrical firm was in this building. And the lady let me she went to the owners and was like she wanted to take another office space, and so she sublet that office space for me and only charged me $500 a month to stay there. And I like retrofitted the space to be like a little apartment for me and my babies, and I didn't have really any money because I didn't have my own bank account. I had just left my mom's home, and I wasn't asking for assistance from any of my family. I was going to do this on my own. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, you had the option because you came from a family with money to do that. But all money's not good money. And my safety and my mental health was way more important to me than living in a beautiful home and living off of my family's money and being in an abusive situation. And you guys know my mom has since passed of cancer, and we reconciled and all that, but none of that had happened at this time. I didn't have much money. I remember like praying to God, like when I first started baking bread, like really, really baking it from scratch. All the time, right? I had already been doing a lot of this in my married life, but it became a necessity, right? When I had nothing. And I would pray, and I remember somebody gave me like 25 pounds of flour, and I was like, oh my gosh. The food security program I'm running right now, um, the reason we give cooking from scratch is because the way that I fed my family back then, and I was a vegetarian back then, partly because I had been a vegetarian for a while, partly because meat and cheese was expensive. So I wanted to learn how to cook without uh, the expensive foods, meat and cheese. So I learned how to make everything without using meat or cheese. And so, anyway, the food security program I run now is built out of that part of my life. I bring all this up to say a lot of people say, so I was a homemaker still with no man taking care of me during this time. This is before I met Mr. Um, and I had nothing. And I had no skills, I had no money. And when I started getting paid by the guys because I had kids and they were really flexible with me, they didn't pay me a lot. I worked my way up and, I started doing more. But I think when we think about homemaking too, the excuse a lot of people use to make sense of this rant and not just make it a story time is that we think that it is something that is only something that women with money can do. We think that it's something that only works if your husband earns a lot. I want to say that I have been homemaking in a penthouse. I've been homemaking in a small office building that I retrofit, like office that I retrofitted into a home. And I've been homemaking now with homes in multiple states. Um, I've been homemaking my whole adult life. And I think that it is possible if what you prioritize, and that was my priority, were my children, if that is what you prioritize, that it is possible to do that. And I will not say that it is always easy, and I will not pretend that it is not easier the more money that you have. But I will say that I was a very happy part of my life. I felt really independent. I ended up sewing. That got me into sewing clothes for my daughters. This is back where when I didn't wear pants. I still don't wear pants really, but it's back when I would not like ever wear anything that wasn't a dress because you guys might remember I was a covered Christian. Some of you might remember that who've been on the channel for a while. So a very conservative Christian. Um, so I think that a lot of times Black women do think that homemaking is unattainable for them, or that it is something of privilege, or that is something that you only do if somebody forces you to do it, or we have all these opinions of it. When really all it boils down to is a choice to prioritize your family, whether that includes a husband or not, and a choice to prioritize your children, and a recognition, like Love was saying, that nobody is going to care for your family the way that you will. Your children will never be as safe with anyone as they are with you. Obviously, I'm talking about people who are healthy, not people like, my mother who were not safe to be around. But most of the time, that's going to be the best choice. And I think that it is more accessible to, sorry, I didn't see you back there, Tiff. I think that sometimes it is more accessible for people than we realize. And I think that I wish that women had conversations more that allowed us to share our stories and share the techniques and things that we use to survive in those situations, share how we make our homes work so that more women could know the joy of staying at home regardless of their situation and regardless of their income level, and that we learned to cherish our womanhood and cherish how important we are to creating a world full of healthy people. I think the reason the world is kind of falling apart now is that women are out of the home. I'm not going to lie. I think the people that do the good work are out doing other work, and it's causing society to like crumble. Did I hate my mom as a child? No, I adored my mom as a child. And I think anybody in this room that has, or this virtual room that suffered from abuse, many of us probably really did love our parents. When my mom got sick with cancer, and she died within like 3 months after telling me that she had cancer, and I was her only child. She didn't think I would take care of her. She was surprised, and I took care of her until the day she died. And I adored my mom. I thought my mom was beautiful. She was a genius. I think I've told you guys this, like an actual genius. She was beautiful. She was amazing to me. I was just terrified of her because she was dangerous and crazy. So,
I had
Hi,
something.
Irene.
Oh,
hey,
Hey, I'm not going to keep you long, but I just wanted to say a few things. I've been bothered lately about how people come down on stay-at-home moms, and a lot of people forget, um, especially if you're born in the '80s or '70s or before. especially when you had a good experience, that was a stay-at-home mom that was watching you. And people have to have value in people who are watching their children while they're at work, especially when they care for your children. Genuinely care for children and care for your child. And it's just ridiculous how we're just putting a system to where people are just worshiping their job. Everything revolves around their job, but they're really not thinking about who's watching your child, who's keeping your child safe. There are some horror stories and things like that, I understand, but my mother was, most of her marriage, well, most of her life, she worked, was a stay-at-home mom. Sometimes she would go into the office and she had secretarial work and different things like that. I guess when, she, didn't feel fulfilled or wanted to do something else. But nothing brings her joy. My mother's like almost 70. Nothing brings her joy than running into the children that she used to watch. And for those children to be excited to see her. And that is a part of a lot of children's development, is who was watching them as a child. And for a lot of people who watched them as a child, especially, nowadays everything's daycare. But back in the day, there weren't any daycares. It was 9 times out of 10 a stay-at-home mom that was watching the children of the neighborhood or the community. And some people call these women to this day mama or grandma, or Miss So-and-so is like family to them. So it would just, I think the same way a woman has a right to go out in the workforce and have a career and balance it with children, I think women have a right to be a stay-at-home mom and do things for her children, even better if she does things for the community. And she shouldn't be shamed for it or devalued for it.
Yeah. Go ahead, love. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that a little bit on my experience, like with what I was saying earlier, I wasn't saying that you should set yourself up, meaning you need to find a man that's, a millionaire in order for you to be a stay-at-home mom. I just meant it like you need to set yourself up to understand that when you have a child, you need to be there for that child for the first few years of their life, like all the time. It's important because it has to do with their development of their whole life. And to give a little bit on my story, I was raised thinking that I had to do everything myself. So I went, I graduated from college, started working full time. I had a nice career, living in New York City. And so it was very expensive. And when I met my husband, maybe this is controversial, but he was making less than me. He's also younger than me. So when we met, he was making less than me. And so when we had our first, I was actually, by the time we had our second, I had to go back to work like right away. And it's something I still regret to this day because it was so hard. They even had a room for pumping and everything at the place I worked. But it was just horrible because I wasn't able to bond with my second child the way I wanted to because I had to go back to work right away. Like right after my maternity leave was up, I was back at work. And what happened was eventually, I ended up leaving that or getting let go from that job. And I realized, why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through all of this stress to stay in Manhattan and make all this money? And of course, my husband was the one who was watching my kid, like watching the baby. He was watching our baby, but it wasn't the same. Even though we couldn't afford childcare for both of our kids at that time. So I had to go back to work full time and we had to switch shifts, but he was home watching the baby. And it was still like just hard, like really hard. And he didn't get the same bonding. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like the baby actually bonds with the mother differently than if it's just the father and you're giving them pumped breast milk. He actually wouldn't even drink regular like formula milk. He refused it. He refused it for weeks because I was thinking wasn't pumping enough. And then my body eventually I had to take his clothes into the pumping room with me just so I could smell it so that I would produce enough milk because I had to literally smell my baby in order to produce milk. And to me, it's like women shouldn't have to go through this. Like they should set themselves up better so they can just be with their baby, because that's what we're made to do. Like we literally have to smell our babies to produce milk. Like it's serious thing. Like you need to be close to your baby. And so I just think that women should really think about this when they're having kids. Like think about how important it is to be there and set yourself up. Eventually we moved out of New York and we switched roles, where I was just a stay-at-home mom, had more kid, had another kid, and then just, everything worked out a lot better with him being the major provider and me being the one who's making less. Whereas when we met, it was the opposite. I was making more. And so he had to be more secondary and take care of the kids. But what I was saying is that it biologically doesn't even work that way, especially when they're young.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, that's just the reality of the thing. I also, Matt, I want to say that women are not a monolith. I agree. But you said for you it was a miserable experience. Let me tell you something. The first time I was a stay at home mom, it was not the best experience for me either. Um, you know, I mean, you guys know my two major relationships, my first marriage and my marriage with Mr. And I was very miserable. I was very unhappy in that marriage. I felt like he didn't listen to me. I'd like to think I'm pretty intelligent. I know I'm pretty intelligent, especially with the level of confidence that Mr. puts in me and, as asking me to be his confidant and things like that. Um, but he did not respect, like, any of that. I think I literally was just there to look attractive, and he just kinda paraded me out when he needed to and, you know, uh, put me back in the closet when he didn't need to. He never wanted to do certain things like just I like to do family stuff. I really am naturally just very family oriented. He never wanted like, if I wanted to have a picnic, he wouldn't even do that. Um, he traveled around the world for his job and, he, like, missed the birth of a child, so that he could go on tour or do something like that. So, it was not outside of, having money, right? It was not, a happy experience for me. Um, I would say that the time that I was alone, and definitely now that I'm with Mister, I've been able to have that joy. But I do think that, as mothers, we need to be supported and loved because we are people too. And I think the level of support and the level of love that you have, um, really plays into whether or not you can find happiness as a mother at home. And I would say the fault isn't necessarily in that it's a mold that you can't squeeze into. As a woman, I would say that, um, society has not done a really good job at supporting women. I think that it helps for women to, number 1, have example, right? That's number 1. And number 2, have the proper support. I always talk about the time my baby sister called me up. Well, both of my sisters were younger than me, but one of my younger sisters called me up and she felt really frustrated, um, in the moment. And she just needed somebody to be honest about, like, the not so positive stuff that was going on with her. And she talked to me and I said, "Yeah, I get it." Like, kids are annoying. Like, they tear stuff up. Sometimes don't you just wanna, like, literally throw them out a window because it's too much? And it was just a relief of her to hear, like, the thing I'm feeling in this moment is okay. And I think a lot of times if a woman has these moments that are dark and the support is not there, and they feel like they have to put on this facade that everything is perfect and everything is fine and I don't need a break or, I'm not struggling in this moment or I feel empty in this area and you don't have women around you to say, "Hey, I've been there and this is what I did," or "This is how I can help," or "Hey, why don't you drop the kids over and, they can stay at my house." Then, that's anything though. That's not about being a stay-at-home mom. Like anything that we do as people, any role we put ourselves in can weigh on us and tax us and feel heavy. I think it's easier to recognize when you're an emergency room doctor. It's easier to recognize when you're a lawyer. It's easier to recognize in for everybody else. But I think we don't give motherhood that respect. And I think if we treated motherhood and understand that it is a job and it is a responsibility and it has ups and lows and mothers need support and a system just like anybody else, then I think more women would have successful experiences being at home with their children.
I was just gonna type in there, but I figure I'll just say it since you stopped. But I agree with you totally. And what I was saying was mostly for children that are toddlers and under, and how important it is to be there. Now, when your kid gets to be school aged and you have it set up where you're comfortable with sending them somewhere if and you want to work, I totally don't see an issue with that. It's with and I think that not all women need to feel like they have to be stay at home moms because I know it's not for everyone. But I also think that it is important to prioritize your child's development when they are really young, like toddlers and under, because they need to have the attachment with their mothers. And I was just saying that it's very important psychologically for their development, overall for the rest of their lives, to have that attachment, that healthy attachment at that baby phase. Because when you give them to a daycare worker, they're kind of forced to like lose it with you, and it's actually not really healthy for them because they end up with an avoidant personality later on in life. And it could just affect the relationships. I mean, I'm not saying it's not something they can't get over or that you're harming them forever, but it's just they're healthier if they have you, is what I mean.
I mean, do we know that it's not harming them forever? I don't know, but you're right. Like, because of the way they attach, like the broken attachments, and then they reattach with like every daycare provider. So let's say they're in daycare for, however many hours and like providers are coming in and out. They attach and then they have to detach and then they have to attach and then they have to detach. And it's actually contrary to like their mental biological design at that time. They're really designed to have a consistent caregiver, and our bodies are designed to be that consistent caregiver. And really, nursing can go into like the first and second year, right? So, I mean, I think the problem is that it's sort of like being a bird that is made to fly, but then not wanting to fly or saying flying's not for me. And I mean, I guess, do you know what I mean? But you are a bird, you have wings, and you're capable of flight. So it would follow that you could get up in the sky and be okay. Do you know what I mean? Um, and I think that's kind of like women, like we're these birds, and I don't know that, and that's kind of going what you're saying, like you're not talking about societal standards, you're talking about personal decision. Um, if your personal decision is, and correct me if I'm commenting on something you weren't talking about, but I thought this was the continue of your thought. If your personal decision is that it's not for you, like I said, um, I would say biologically it absolutely is for you. You can choose to like ignore that, but I think motherhood is a higher calling that is higher than ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Like motherhood is, and I know people don't like this word, and it has a negative connotation, but it's sacrificial. And I think from a Christian perspective, that is a good thing. You are sacrificing your body, you're sacrificing your autonomy. And this, like, when you're breastfeeding, like, you stop being your own person because you're literally sustaining the life of another human being. Pregnancy is the same way. And I think that we have a negative look at that when it really speaks to really just how amazing and how much it should be respected. Do you know what I mean? Because motherhood really is an art in art of sacrifice, and it's not a punishment. It just is what it is. because we are women and just because of biology, just the way things are. You know what I'm saying? I just wish that we didn't collectively hate it so much. I wish society didn't hate us so much.
Yeah, but I think we
I,
also live in a backwards world. So the world doesn't value when you sacrifice yourself for another person. The world values when you sacrifice other people for yourself. Like, we're basically taught the opposite of what is true and what is right. And I think there are a lot of aspects of motherhood that are a beautiful picture of what is true and what is right, like selflessness and being self sacrificial. But when we live in a world that values the opposite, of course, they're going to hate the thing that is a partial embodiment of those truths.
Irene, I want to say I agree with you, but I also wanted to say that for the past, I would say 30 years or maybe 40 now, we see the results: mothers spending less time at home with their children. We see it in crime, we see it in a lot of things. Even children who don't come from single mothers, they could come from two-parent homes, they could come from the suburbs, they could be any race, they could be white. And especially the boys, you could tell by the results of crime and violence that there's less mothers spending less time at home. And I'm not faulting them at home. I mean, I'm not faulting them at all. I have definitely been in that position as a mother where, I might have to work overtime, different things like that, especially as a single mother. But um, I know some women find more enjoyment being out of the home, which is great if you don't have children, you have all the time in the world. But we see the results.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when we look at the world today, even looking at male degeneracy, which is really a concern for me, um, I think a lot of men have a degenerate nature these days. And I think that that comes a lot from um, this kind of hands off parenting style. There's just no oversight, there's no learn to love and respect women. Um, for I think when we live in a world where men overwhelmingly, at least in the Western world, view women as sexual objects, and as less than people, that is indicative of them not having a healthy female experience. I think mothers help to humanize women. I think the relationships we have with our children help to ground them. I think the same thing for women too, the lack of respect that women have for ourselves, the lack of respect that collectively we have for our bodies, the lack of respect that we collectively have for our womanhood. I think that that comes from, again, this detachment. And I know I want to be clear, I'm not saying it's all mothers' fault. That's not my goal. My goal is to say that mothers and being with your children is far more important than I think society has um, impressed upon us. And I think it's been greatly devalued. And we're, like you said, Tiff, we're starting to see the results of this behavior or lack of action and lack of participation of mothers because everybody is growing up and they're just really screwed up. I mean, they're truly screwed up. And, you know, I think that it also is why, and it's kind of like a self perpetuating thing, right? Because if, like I said earlier, the scripture says that women have to be taught to learn, love their husbands and their children. So if you have a mother that is not in the home, and you're not with a trusted female family member, then there's nobody teaching you those skills, right? My girls can watch me, and they do, is what I've learned as they get older. They watch me, they watch how I interact with Mister, they see how I interact with them, they see my mothering and they experience that day to day. And not only does that teach them how to navigate that, right? Because they're seeing it every day. And they're also having the benefit of the relationship with me. And I get to be like the primary barometer of everything that becomes ultimately the person they are. So their barometer of morality, their barometer of behavior. And this can be negative too, right? So, my youngest son, because I have all boys except for these two girls. And so my youngest son is so much younger, like he's, over 20 years younger than my eldest son. So he hasn't really grown up in a home with other boys for any significant amount of time. So the emotionality that all of us girls have, he picks up on that. Do you know what I mean? And so we have to, like, I have to tell him, like, hey, this is how we behave, but you can't be like us. Look at how your big brother behaves. Look at how your dad behaves. And you need to copy that. Like, the way we're doing it may not, it's may not be wrong, but it's definitely not right for you. Do you know what I mean? Like the reason we're doing it is because, women tend to have a little bit more emotion due to these reasons or whatever. So they pick up on everything, but then you become the barometer. And also it's humbling. Like you don't really recognize how much your children um look up to you when you're around them a lot. Um My daughter said something in, like, recent history, and I was so shocked by it, and the gist of it is, my daughter thinks I'm so amazing. She just honestly thinks I'm glamorous. She thinks all these things about me that are really far too good for anything that I deserve her to think, but it's like, wow, like, this little person that I gave birth to and that I've been staying home with her whole life, she has such a high opinion of me. You know what I mean? I'm not crying, my nose is stuffy, sorry, you guys. Um, Same thing, like, with all of my kids, and even when I do things wrong, um, a lot of times they hold me to such a high standard that when I do something that is wrong, like, it's shocking to them, and that helps me balance myself as a person. But the point is, I don't think my kids would be who they are today if I hadn't been there. Like, I look at my kids, and I know that is a direct result of my choices because I was there, right? I look at their values and I'm like, "Oh, I instilled that." I know that I was there most days of their childhood, raising them and being that primary anchor to them. And I know that when they go off into the world, they will have standards that are laid by everything that they observed in their own house. That goes for absent mothers and absent fathers too, because their standard is what they experienced in that home. And that's why I think we greatly undervalue the importance that parents and specifically mothers play in what world we're living in now. Like, just think back to your childhood. How much of that did you carry into your adulthood? How much of that are you emulating knowingly or unknowingly in this moment? Do you know what I mean?
Irene, I just want to say thanks for letting me on, and for you to have a good evening, and all the ladies to have a good evening.
Oh, yes, you have a nice evening too. Thank you for coming up. Oh, my
Sure.
nose is like so stuffy. I've been having like on and off stuffy nose. I'm not sick for like several weeks now. It's like my son got me sick and I've never quite got right from it. Um anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't have too much to say other than I totally agree with you that we really need to be there, and I wanted to just give a little bit on my experience because I started homeschooling my kids during COVID, and before COVID, I just had this unconscious thought in my mind that I couldn't educate my kids, even though I was forcing my oldest to come home and do more school after school, which is really not ideal, but it was because I knew that they weren't giving her what she needed. So I would be, at home putting together things, and it worked out perfectly because at the time I was pregnant, and so I was already home, and then they came home, and then I was like, I've been doing all this work anyway, how about we just do it now together? And then it just all worked out where it was like, why would I ever send them back? Why would I ever send them back to school after we've had this? And just how much closer we became, and how much more I got to know her, especially just from having her home. And it's like, you only have them for that first 18 years. Like, there's only so many summers that you can spend, but isn't it better to be able to spend all of the time with them, to be there all of the time? Like, I don't think people realize like just how important that is, because their childhood goes by so fast. And if you just give it away to some teacher that a lot of them don't even care because it's one of hundreds and they really are just there for a check. I mean, you're giving your child to that? Like, I don't know. I just find it like just laughable that people, and that I was even brainwashed into thinking that that was how it was supposed to be done, because it's not.
And then there's the other kids too. Like, the adults are one thing, but then you do have all these children that are coming from different homes and like bringing different things to the table when they're in those environments, and your children can get exposed to a lot. I literally took, um, I'm going to tell you guys a quick story. So Christian got to go to, and it's our churches, y'all, our churches summer camp. And he came home the first day, and I wasn't like, I'm not a person to like leave my kids places, but our church's camp is literally 1 block away from our house. Like, I walk to the end of my block and then I can see the church, and then I walk to the end of the church's block and it's the gate to the summer camp. Like, that's how close that it is, right? So it's literally 1 block away. Um and we've been at this church for years. Um, and I know a lot of the people there. My daughter, she's, working with horses at the camp. So I was like, okay, I didn't want to let him go, but he really wanted to go because he's wanted to go for years because all his friends go every single year. And he's like the only one that doesn't get to go. And my husband was like, you know what? Let him go. So we went. I took him and I asked for a tour of the camp, even though we go to the camp. Like, if you watch my vlog where we do the like uh kind of Christmassy stuff, even though we don't celebrate Christmas, that's our camp. That's like our church's camp. That's like a part of it. They throw that event there every year. So we did a tour. We talked about like the pool and like exactly where he'd be changing and boundaries and like all of this thing. And then he goes to the first day of camp and he comes home and he goes, Mom, like, he's in a group with all boys, boy staff, boy campers. He's like, Mom, one of the boys keeps trying to kiss everybody. And, they had to talk to him about safe touch. Next day he comes home and he's like, he's still kissing everybody. I don't know what's wrong with him. Third day he comes home. No. Yeah, third day he comes home and he's like, Mom, now he knows the little boy's name. I know what's wrong with Sam. And he said he thinks he's a girl. I was like, "Oh," he's like, "We got in a fight, and I had to go to the nurse because he kept saying, like, I'm the boyfriend, he's the girlfriend, and he tried to kiss me, and we got into a fight." And then he was, like, describing the fight, which was really interesting. Like, where who hit who where, who kicked who where. So, anyway, I'm gonna tell the end of the story, even though this is not part of my point. Um, I contacted the camp. I said, we have a transgender. They were very surprised by that because the little boy presents as a boy. And I said Christian just needed to be moved because we are not doing that, right? And then I also said he couldn't go back to the camp, but there's more reasons than that he can't go back to the camp. It's not just that. My point is that it's the other kids too, though. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we send our kids into these school settings, and especially depending on where you live. I live on the West Coast. It's very liberal over here. You don't know what your child is going to encounter, and children are very malleable. You don't know what people are on, be they a child or an adult, and then you're sending your child for 8 hours a day to be in this environment with these people, and they are going to be developing their worldviews and developing their tastes and their attitudes, and it's gonna be input coming from all these strangers who are living all kinds of variety of lives, are into all kinds of things, are exposed to all kinds of things. Another example is I took him to a birthday party, and later on, he was telling me that one of the little boys at the birthday party was saying that he should go kiss, somebody's butt, right? A little girl's butt. Now, um, because they like each other or whatever. Now, Christian wasn't, like, mentally prepared for that, but this little boy obviously is around kids and, like, that's their banter, right? I'm gonna use the word sexual, but I don't mean intercourse, right? But sexual in nature, like, he had been into that banter, so he was kinda, and I could tell based on what he said the little boy was saying. But can you imagine, like, all these different kinds of kids in a school environment 9 hours a day for, X amount of months a year, like, the product of that is not your work. You know what I mean? The product of that is somebody else's work. So that's something definitely for us to think about. I cannot talk any long. Can you guys tell that I'm very stuffed? My no my nose is my nose is extremely stuffed. Um, so I'm definitely gonna end this live. But ladies, do you guys have anything you wanna say before we go?
I don't know. I was just gonna quickly say that I um I agree, and they can pick up stuff just from being around other kids sometimes, which is why, like in your case, it's great because you have a close relationship with your kid. Your kid is telling you what's going on. Here's the thing: a lot of these public school kids or kids that are going in every day, they don't have close enough relationship with their parents that they're even telling them what's going on a day-to-day basis. They're not telling them. So you're like, because your kid's close enough to you to tell you, hey, this happened today. A lot of kids, you ask them what happened, they're just like, oh, nothing, even though all the same things could have happened. And so that's why it's so important to be close to them and to have them close to you. And I had one other comment that was off subject, which I don't know if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But in my community, there's a lot of other stay-at-home moms, and we all do get together, and it's a really nice community. But one thing I've noticed, for once of all, they're mostly all white. They're all white. All the stay-at-home other moms are white, just so you know. And for some reason, they're all on antidepressants. Like, what is it with all these stay-at-home white women on antidepressants or anxiety medication? They're on like anxiety medication or a little bit of both. A lot of it's anxiety medication. And I don't know, like, what is this? Are they just all medicated because they go to their doctors to get medicated? Like, I don't know. That's off subject, but I was just wondering if
Are
you knew
they
about
are
it.
I know a lot of stay-at-home moms. I don't know any that are on anxiety medication, but I do know, do you live, like, in a liberal area?
I live in Ohio. It's mixed. They're religious. They're Christian. So
Interesting.
I don't
That's
know,
wild.
but they're a little more liberal than they should be, considering that they consider themselves Christian. They're like kind of liberal conservative, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know, like, there are some Christian churches where, I mean, they're calling themselves Christian, but I'm like, "What's going on?" I would say that what I found with white people, kinda like the scenario that I was talking about in my video yesterday of my experience at the grant meeting is, and I'm saying I find this to be with white liberals, is that outside of trying to overcompensate for being white, which is weird, they also tend to want to have something wrong with them. Like, so for example, where I am, this is like a real thing that people do. People announce themselves. If they can identify as anything that's not black, they'll announce that. And then they will start to announce the things that are wrong with them. Like, I have, ADHD and, bipolar disorder. And you know what I mean? They start like rattling it off like a list. And I'm like, and all I needed was your name. Do you know what I mean? But it's like actually a way that a subsect of these white liberals greet. Um, and the reason I bring that up is because having something wrong, like there's with white liberals, I find that having an oppressive status has value to them. So they're always looking for ways to have something wrong so they're not just white. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not just white. I'm white, but I have, I'm dyslexic. I'm
I
not
think you're
just
right. I
white.
actually never thought about it like that.
You know what I
Maybe you're
mean?
right. You might be right because there's a few of them that will come up. So like when I first met one woman, she's like, "And I have ADHD," and I'm like, I was just so confused. And then the other one's like, "Oh, I'm going getting tested for that, and I'm getting my medication changed for my anxiety." Like I don't know, it's just really weird. I'm just
Yeah, or
like,
they start testing for, like, allergies and stuff, and, like, all their kids are getting tested for, like, everything under the sun, and they have these abstract illnesses that, like, have symptoms but don't really have symptoms, and you know what I mean? Like, they just wanna be something other than just white.
I think it's a defense mechanism for our current cultural context. It's like they see the tide is shifting where being white is falling out of favor. So they try to identify with a marginalized or oppressed group so they can, I think it's their way of signaling, like, yeah, I'm white, but I'm also oppressed. Or, yeah, I'm white, but I suffer too. It's some sort of weird defense mechanism, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's probably why they're all on antidepressants. And they might not even realize that's why they're doing it, but being out here and I live in an area that's predominantly white. Being out here, I'm like like I get it. Do you know what I mean? Um, I have to deal with that a lot, and it's really weird. It's just it's a weird environment to be in. I would just say that. So I think that's why they're on, that could be something behind it. They have some sort of internalized screwed upness over their whiteness. Um,
all
which
right,
is
well that's it.
unfortunate.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
a different take that I hadn't thought about. So I think you might be right.
Yeah. It's nice talking to you, love. What about you, Adrian? Do you have anything you want to go out on?
No, I don't have any final thoughts. I appreciate this conversation. Thanks for giving us the space to chit chat.
Yeah, it was nice talking with you guys because I've not had a live until like really very many until recently, and I've not had the opportunity to have anybody up. So I always like talking to you guys. And I felt really passionate about this subject. Like I was very outraged um over this subject, and I wanted to talk about it because I feel so passionately about being a stay-at-home mom. But I also just wanted to make sure that while Mr. is out of town, I get as many lives in as possible. Because it seems like my upcoming week is like pretty relatively free, except for I'm grant writing, and then I have all of these pop-up meetings. Oh, I do want to make a request. Of the people who are left, if you are praying people, like if you are my fellow Christians, um, pray for me and the people that are involved in this project. Um, I think that this project, like I said, the project surrounds these families that um, lived in, or to put the racism in perspective, they weren't allowed to live in the city. And then once a week, they would burn a cross on the top of a hill that sits in the middle of the city. And it wasn't until the 70s that the law that they had to leave, even though Black people were living in the city, it wasn't until the 70s until they repealed the law. And this particular group of families were forced to live like in an area that is now a park. Um, and they lived there with wood rats. It was a flood zone, but they lived there with their families. They built a church there, and then the city came in and they bulldozed all their homes down and they bulldozed their church down, and then they kind of terrorized them and sprinkled them throughout the city and dispersed them if they started to try to live next to each other, and it was like a big mess. And so, like I was mentioning the other day, there's about 4 survivors, so they're really old. Um, and when we came into the discussion, it was because one of the female survivors, the city and county have been talking to her about putting a plaque in the area that is now a park where they used to live in honor of the families. And for 2 years, nothing happened. And she was getting really frustrated. And so she told my client, "Hey, can you guys come to this meeting?" And then my client told me, because I do all the proposals and I get all the money. And I put up together a proposal and I was like, you know what? We're going to do something better. And we went in and we came to an agreement with the city and the county. Now, mind you, this is just one woman from one of the families. So we then went out and started to meet with all the other families, right? Because for 2 years, they had just been talking to one family. And these people, having grown up in such a highly racist environment where there are almost no Black people, there's just a lot of hurt and pain there. And um, while we're doing all this, we're also doing other things. So, mind you, we've got the food security program. We just opened up a new office building. We partnered with one of the local colleges so that we could have small business advisors in our business incubator. We're, like in the past 3 years, 3, 4 years, we've done so much work. Like, and there are people that have been here doing work for decades. And like we're really hitting the scene. And some of the old heads fill away. You know what I mean? And they actively are trying to like sabotage the project. And I think they have their own like trauma from being in this area for so long. So to be clear, you guys know I have multiple homes in different states. And well, I shouldn't say it that way. I have multiple homes in different states, but we have more than one home in California. Um, so in the particular home that I'm in now, in this area, there are very, very few Black people. And so these people have greatly suffered. And one of the old heads went around and told them that the conversations we were having are not the way we're portraying them. They're actually about reparations. And so a lot of people didn't bite. They kind of told us what was going on and they're not really tripping. Um, they get the briefs, they get the port reports. But there's a handful of people, like three of all the families, and they really don't have much. One is a criminal, and he really needs money. One is somebody who has a mother who has dementia. And since we just lost my husband's mother to dementia, we know, and I talked to you guys about this when I first came back after taking several months off of YouTube, we were paying $4,000 a month. No, $7,000 total a month for her memory care, right? After like for room board, for all of the stuff that is attached to that. And so I know that one family member probably needs money too. Her mom is one of the survivors. She has dementia, and the woman is also elderly. And I really don't know what's going on with the third person. I don't know them as well. I don't know what their issue is, but obviously they need money too. So they let these elders, which is crazy that it's Black people and their elders, get in their ear. And one person approached us and tried to extort money from us. And we just shared that with everybody. Um, Another person contacted her sister and said, maybe we can, I'm raising $300,000 for this project. Maybe we can take the money. And the thing is, there is no money. I have to raise it. But more importantly, $300,000 wouldn't go far with 5 families that have dozens of people in them, right? And the community doesn't care about these Black people. But by doing this project, it's getting in the news. It's getting people involved. We put out a community poll. 2,000 people so far have taken the poll. And like it's educating the public because a lot of people don't know about these families. They don't know that in the biggest park in the city, there were Black families living there and their homes were bulldozed down. They don't know that some of these people are still alive. So this project is helping to, number one, immortalize the fact that they were there with something tangible. Number two, educate the public. And then hopefully from that, that can lead into a conversation about reparations. Nevertheless, in the midst of all this, it's just a lot of slanderous statements against the nonprofits, against us as individuals. And it's only fortunate that people know us, that it hasn't gotten out of hand. But I say all this to say that I would appreciate those of you who are praying people to like pray about this situation. Tomorrow at like 5:30 my time, we'll be having a meeting with the city and the county, the families, our local NAACP branch, and we are going to um, let them know the things we've already let them know, but with everybody in the room. And just pray for the families, pray for the meeting itself, pray for the two Black elders who are the cause of all the trouble around this. Because I don't know what's wrong with them, but I definitely know that we should be praying for them. Um, and that we can do some healing and connecting in this local Black community. Like I said, it's weird being in a place where Black people don't even acknowledge each other. Like, this is the kind of place where, you know, how if you see another Black person, even if you don't know them, you kind of just acknowledge them. Is it just me? Do we all know that that is a thing that we do? um, Ladies up here, do you guys do that? Like, acknowledge other Black people when you see them in the chat?
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yes, but sometimes they don't acknowledge me back. It just depends. Sometimes they don't notice that I'm acknowledging.
Yep,
Yeah.
it depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, out here, they literally walk the other way. Um, Out here, they pretend like they don't see you. Um, they don't have Black community centers. They just the first two Black restaurants just opened up like in the past year. Um, they don't have a Black beauty supply store. They don't have Black anything. Um, they just don't do that out here. Most of the children that are Black don't even live with Black families. That's how it is out here. Most of them are, like, adopted, or they might have, like, a Black father, but they live, like, with their white family, and they don't have contact with their father. When I do outreach at the schools, the children, they say they learn about Black culture from television because they don't actually know other Black people. Like, if you get 20 Black people in a room out here, it's like, for a lot of these people, the most Black people they've ever been around in one place. It's like that kind of environment. It's crazy that there are places like that in the United States, but that's exactly what it's like. So, like, your prayers would be greatly appreciated. I think the fact that we have this building and we are doing cultural programming and we have a Black business incubator and we are doing all of these self-sufficiency programs and we are connecting in with like the smaller Black orgs that are around. um, I think all this unity is problematic, even though it's really needed. And so if you guys are praying people and you can just pray that, you know, God's will be done in the situation, that, we can unify, come to some level of peace, find a way to support these four individuals that are aging. Um, I would appreciate that. Like, the more people praying about the situation, the better. I think, that's what's really needed. And I'm really fortunate that all of the people I'm working with are Christian. My client, she was like a paganist when I met her several years ago when we first got this house, and my husband introduced us. And she's getting baptized on Saturday. She's like in her 50s. And we met with the president of the NAACP, and I've never been fond of the NAACP, and he's the new president, and we were able to start that meeting with a prayer. So I think that's part of the energy too, is like a lot of Christians are involved in this work, and in equity spaces, it is rare that Christians are involved in equity work. And there's so many Christians. Like the guy that does our financial literacy classes, he's Christian. Like I said, my client is like a born again, about to be a born again Christian. She gets baptized on Saturday. A pastor sits on the board. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of it too. I think, if you believe in those sort of things, the devil is just kind of working, because it's not just unity, it's a bunch of Christians coming together in a space that normally we are not found in. And I want to leave with that, that as Christians, we need to get into these equity spaces more and not transform ourselves for those spaces, but try to transform those spaces, right? So that God can be represented more in them. Because out here, it's all the gays that are in the equity work. The atheists are in the equity work. Everybody's in it. I think this is the first time significant amount of Christians have been like, hey, we're in this thing too. Like, we're here too. We're providing services too. You can come over here too. Not that the nonprofit is a religious nonprofit, just that there are religious people doing the work in it. So anyway, that's my request of you guys. If you don't mind, I would appreciate that. That's kind of what I want to go out on. And I'm not sure what my next video will be. I know that something I kind of want to talk about with you guys is this situation with Candace Owens and the comments that she made. I don't know if a lot of you guys are familiar with this, but she made some comments about the young sister that recently was, I believe her name was Sonia, that was recently shot in her home by a police officer. And it kind of goes into my thing about the hypocrisy of conservatives. Most conservative channels are not talking about this situation because, they can't blame the victim. And the one who did, though, was Candace Owens. And I don't know if any of you guys actually watched what she had to say about
I
Sonia
did.
Masson.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, she's off the chain. So
She's going off the deep end. She converted to Catholicism, so she's really just going left in a conservative way. She's going to the left.
yeah, no, I agree. And I find that in these racist conservative spaces, there are a lot of Catholics. That is the Christian representation, are Catholics.
Yeah, Matt Walsh. Oh my goodness.
And then there's the other one whose name I can't think about. He's Catholic.
Matthew Knowles?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He
All
has
those choir guys.
Yeah, lots of Catholics in those spaces. So I think I want to do a commentary on that, and also like the spiritual aspect of it, because when he murdered her and she was saying, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, I think she was going through something, but like his response was so demonic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like it triggered something in him that was
He got
outside of
angry instantly when she said that.
It was wild, right? It was almost like we were watching an exorcism gone wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, I won't talk about that now, but I think that will be the next live, and then I'll pick up with Project 2025 maybe after that, just because Project 2025 is so like, oh, it's like so much. But yeah, I think that will be the next conversation we have. So anyway, you ladies have a nice evening. Same to all of you in the chat.
Good night. I'm on the East Coast, so it's like bedtime.
Oh yeah, it's real late. It's real late. You definitely have a nice evening.
Yep.
You
Nice.
too.